Hello and welcome to the Relationship Conference. We are so excited for today. It's going to be such a great conference. I think we're going to have so many great opportunities to hear from great speakers, get some great resources. And first off, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Marcus. I'm one of the pastors at New Break.
And my name is Kamar.
And today is the Relationship Conference, as we've said. And maybe you're here and you're saying, I just want to strengthen myself to be a better partner in whatever relationship that you may be in. Or you're saying, I actually want to be able to help other relationships. I want to see this relationship that I'm in right now, see it grow and even become even stronger than I could have ever imagined. Well, you're in the right place, and we think there's going to be some great resources and great tools and great keynote speakers and panels. There's so many great things going on. Kamar, what do we have?
Yes, absolutely. So we're going to jump into our first keynote session here in just a second. It's called The Pursuit in Marriage.
That's awesome.
And then we're going to follow it up directly by our first panel discussion called Conflict and Communication in Marriage. So that's going to be a good one. Yeah, that one's going to be with licensed marriage and family therapist Amy Elliott and Mike and Claire Kuipers. And they've been a part of the New Break Church family since 2005, leading marriage groups, couples groups. So it's going to be a really, really good one. And if you want any of the speaker bios and the full version of it or the schedule for today's conference, you can find that at newbreak.church/the relationship conference. And, keep an eye out for Marcus and I because we're going to have some free giveaway prizes for you guys and resources, all kinds of good stuff all throughout the conference. So you'll want to be able to check in between those panel and keynote sessions for sure. Yeah. So for today's first keynote session, I'm really excited about this one. We get to be with pastors Mike and Teresa Quinn.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And on top of all of their years of education and experience, leading New Break Church and counseling people and teaching them, they just bring this realness to the topic of marriage. And it's so good. They've been married for 45 years.
Unreal.
Yeah. They have 3 grown children and lots of really wonderful grandkiddos. So let's join in with them and hear some of what God has taught them in 45 years of marriage.
Let's check it out.
What's really funny in a way to us is that when we first got married, while we had a tremendous view of marriage and wanted to be our whole lives married, we didn't really have a lot going for us as we kind of entered in to marriage, except for Jesus, which is really the key to all of our marriage. Because, okay, honey, what was the date of our first date?
February 20th, 1976, just a few years ago here.
And what was the date when I told you I loved you?
You told me you loved me on March 20th.
March 20th?
1976.
Nice. March 20th, 1976, great date. And then I proposed to her,
April 3rd, 1976. It was a super long, dating relationship.
Yeah, and then we got married June 12th. In 1976. So as you can see, we just didn't have a lot of runway. We didn't have a clue really of what it was like to have a marriage, let alone a Christian marriage, right? Let alone having a Christ-centered marriage. We just didn't have a lot on the ball. And by the way, our short dating experience is not prescriptive, it is just descriptive. I just want to kind of set the table for you as it relates to our story and how God did it in our lives.
Yeah, we didn't really have any role models that we would say, I want a marriage like that. And so when we first got married, we really were just praying and trying to figure it out and find role models. So we began to read books on marriage. Norm Wright was really famous then and went to marriage conferences. We would go to weekend retreats on marriages. We did so much because we wanted to have a good marriage. And seriously, we didn't know what it looked like. We were both new Christians. I was raised up in, a little bit of a wild and crazy home. In the 60s, Los Angeles, and everything you'd think about that era. So, and Mike's family was close by. They lived in Camarillo, similar style of family. And so I think one of the great turning points for us were many little ones. But I think when we learned about the love language, around 1992 or so, we were at a conference and began to learn about the 5 love languages. Words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, physical touch, and you can guess whose favorite one that one is, and receiving gifts, you can guess whose that one is. And so, and it was a way that we could really begin to fill one another's love tank.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was a real turning point for us. And in 1 Thessalonians 5:11, it says, encourage each other and build one another up. And so that was one of the ways we really built each other up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wouldn't even have a clue of what she's talking about from my growing up. My parents were great parents, but they weren't Christ followers, and they were not, they had rough spots in their marriage for sure. And so I didn't know what I was doing, and Teresa didn't. So we just leaned into mentors that we could draw from and learn from.
Yes. Even like two of our mentors were these older women who were widows. But great mentors they made for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and we just had to basically begin to learn one another's love language and how that worked in each other. And not just as a label, if you will, but as a way for me to kind of unlock the mystery of Teresa, right? I've often said my goal in life is to get a PhD in Teresaology.
And my goal is to get a PhD in mycology.
Yeah.
Because this is the most important person outside of Jesus and have my relationship with God. It's my husband. It needs to be. It's the core of our family, is our relationship, and what we get to pass down to the next generation. So we make our home, we've tried. We have not been perfect. We've had hours and years of sitting in front of a counselor. So this isn't out of perfection.
Yeah, which by the way, just to empower you, anything that we talk about, we have a high view of therapy, a high view of the integration of scripture and psychology. And I just want to encourage you, if you run into roadblocks, go to a good Christian therapist. You can ask your campus pastors, directors, whatever, as to who that might be. We have resources there for you and so forth. So please do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and with that, you think when you come into your home, what is your greatest need? What do you need from your spouse? What does that look like? And that's why going back again to how we are going to describe, just for a minute, love languages. We're not going to land on that for today, but it's part of it. It's very important because we believe our home is a place where you get refueled, not where you get your fuel all depleted. And a lot of homes run where it's a place of depletion instead of a place of refueling. Mm-hmm. But I think that if you really want to, and as we begin this conversation today, and you begin to have a passion, more of a passion for your marriage, that I believe that you can be shifted around to find a place in your home where it becomes a place of refueling. And one thing I like to do is in regards to love language, Mike, what do you think mine are? It's a test. It is a test. It's a test.
And I had to learn these again. We read the book a long time ago, but I had to learn them intuitively so that I would kind of know what they are in Teresa without having to think about it. Although I had to train myself to think about it initially. But the goal is eventually you kind of walk in it. And of course, I don't do this perfectly, as anyone can attest to. But one of the things that Teresa loves is quality time, right? Like she loves it when I arrange a babysitter and take her out on a date and plan the date and make all the arrangements for the date. That really fills up her love tank. It's a beautiful way to minister to her and care for her. She just loves quality time, and it's just the way she's wired. Now, all of us are wired a little bit this way, but some of us are wired more this way than others, and that's certainly her. And now it's like playing games. We love to play games together. We have bikes. As you know, I'm a major cyclist now.
And I got a tricycle.
Yeah.
So don't be embarrassed if you go for a three-wheeler. You can go grocery shopping, everything on it. But it's quality time.
Tell them about the little girl.
Oh, yeah. Our garage door is open, and this little girl's walking by with her mom, and she says, "Oh, look, Mommy." And then she says to me, "I have a tricycle just like yours." You start going backwards in age, and that's all I've got to say. It was adorable.
And another thing we love doing is walking. I'll talk a little bit later about prayer and prayer walking, but we love walking together. That wasn't a natural for me at all. I'm more of a gym rat, and in the early days, I didn't like walking that much because I was surfing, and so it just didn't work that much for me. But I realized, and this took a while, but I ultimately realized that was a big deal for her. And quite frankly, now it's been a huge blessing for me because walking is a great way to, get in some exercise and so forth.
Yeah. I think one of our, both of us have the love language of acts of service. Both of us like at different times to have the other one serve us. And so I think that's a real common one we have. For Mike, one of the ones I see, physical touch. And we're going to talk a little about sex later because it's so important in our marriages. So this is outside of physical touch sexually, although let's just say he probably enjoys that a ton. But he also has, he wants me to hold his hand. He wants me to hug him. He wants me to sit close to him. Except we're sleeping in bed because it gets hot. But he likes physical touch, just like he likes to do physical activities. The other one I see in you is words of affirmation.
Yeah.
So with Mike, if he cleans the kitchen, he will say, "Did you notice how clean the kitchen is?" So I try and beat him to the punch and say, "Oh, look how clean you did the kitchen." So it's learning. He needs to hear that. And I think it's beautiful. So it's learning what the other one needs and then getting in there and just making them feel so great about themselves.
And one of Teresa's is receiving gifts. She loves gifts. She loves to give gifts also, but she loves to receive gifts. And that's kind of evolved over the course of our lives. She loves it when I get her flowers, so I try and always have flowers, for her. By the way, a great place to buy fresh flowers, roses in particular, is Costco. They're super cheap and they last forever. Just thought I'd throw it in. And when it comes to communication, don't assume that, like I had to kind of continually study her to see what she liked. I wasn't that good at clothes and stuff. I'm still not. She pretty much, dresses me, which can be a lot of fun. No, but she's more stylish than I am. It's just kind of the way we grew up. But you can't ever assume, you got to communicate what your needs are to each other and with each other. You can't play the mind reader thing, like where she should just know what I want. No, you have to tell her, and she has to tell me. It's one of the values of the scripture is speaking the truth in love. And so we have to speak the truth into each other. Otherwise, we're missing all kinds of potential in the marriage. And of course, physical touch, yes, for me, as she said. I love physical touch. So I'm a hugger by nature.
Yes.
And I like to hold hands when we walk and, whatever. When we're laying on the couch, we had a TV couch with a thing in the middle, and we actually gave that away and bought a new couch so that she could lay on the couch and I could rub her neck and
I rotate and you can rub my feet, or we just sit next to each other.
Yeah, because we realized that, this sounds very practical, but
yes.
We realized that the couch was kind of getting in the way of our physical touch. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And all of this comes into communication. And now I want to explain something that is often misunderstood, and it certainly was in my life for many, many years. And it's because of our family of origins issues, and it's also because of our spiritual family of origins issues. When we became Christ followers, we would read, for example, Ephesians chapter 5, the famous section on submission and love, like 5:25 and 26. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. But we would skip verse 21 in the exact same passage that begins the passage with submit to one another. So what happened was, because of the way I was raised in a very patriarchal home, right? And you were raised
in a matriarchal home. My mom was the rule and reign of that family in the family unit, and that's how I was raised. My dad did all the cooking, he did the grocery shopping, worked full time. So and then we'd all have our chores. Mike's family was completely different.
Yeah, totally. The boys just got off. We did outside chores and whatever, and the girls did all the cooking and the laundry and just all the cleaning. And so I came into marriage with all these really crazy expectations, and it was because of just the way I was raised. And then the church in that era,
yes.
If I could, they really had, in my opinion, misinterpreted a lot of this section of Scripture. And they didn't really understand that it was truly about love and respect, not submission. Submission is the bar for all of us. And husbands, loving your wives like Christ did the church, that means he died for her. So that means I die It's similar to Jesus' value when he says, take up your cross daily and follow me. You know, dying for one another in marriage is one of the keys to marriage.
Well, it really is. And, you know, I think that we had to come to this understanding in our communication of this mutual submission.
Yeah.
Neither one of us lived that way. You know, at first it was so difficult for us because we were thinking, oh, submit, that means I have to lay my life aside and completely submit to everything Mike wants to think, do, and it was all about him. And that wasn't healthy for him, and it wasn't healthy for me. And as we began to grow and understand the mutual submission, it was a game changer in our marriage. Big difference. And then we could come upon, agreed upon areas of our whole lives.
Yeah.
We could begin to start with chores in the house.
Yep.
You know, who wants to do what? What does that look like? How do you do that? What do you enjoy doing? They may say, I enjoy doing nothing in the house. Well, what do you want to do the toilets then? You know, you figure it out. So we began to go through that. We began to go practically through that. And then as we begin to have these honest conversations and to begin to align our lives around submitting one to another, who's really good at something, who's better at something, and beginning to separate that out, beginning to walk side by side in a much healthier way, that we could begin to really talk about finances. So that communication, once you get into one level, you go to the next. Did you know that finances are the biggest reason, number one reason for divorces today? Just think about that. What are your conversations about finances? It's usually a hot topic. And if your topic is so hot that you both get angry and irritated when you're talking about finances, I would encourage you on a number of different levels. First, go to a counselor. Get some marriage counseling. It's so much cheaper than a divorce and so much healthier for your children and your lives. The second thing would be to take a Financial Peace University class. Those are fabulous. Mike and I have been through them on several times together.
Yeah, we took the kids through them.
We took our
So
children
when
through them.
back in the day when that book really first came out
Yeah.
as a tool, we did it with the staff.
Right.
I remember like whoever was on staff at that time, certainly the pastors and so forth, we all went through it together, and it was a really liberating experience to go through it together. And we discovered right away that some of us are better at it than others. But it was this baseline of understanding finances built upon kind of co-leadership. That's how we view it. We do it together. We lead the family together. We're there for each other. It's really like co-leaders, right?
Yeah, you're co-leading the family and finding out what you're best at. What has God created you to do? What are you the best? And back to finances, because it is so important. You know, if you're able to have healthy conversations about finances, then create a budget. Mm-hmm. And then you prioritize what's important to you. And then what's important to you? What do we need to pay first? And with Mike and I, it was, we were very committed to tithing, so that was always number one for us. And then our house payment, and then it goes down the list. And then we want to both be generous. That is something God put in our hearts. So we always take Kingdom Builders very seriously. And so, depending where you're at with your finances and communication, I would encourage you maximize that for a really healthy marriage.
Yeah, and that's a journey. I've shared this before, but you may have never heard it. Every year, at the end of the year, we have a kind of prayer journey and think about the next year, so in 2021 in this case, right? Are we in 20?
Yeah, 2021. It's 2021. I know, 2020 was like, what happened there? 2021, welcome to it. I don't know, it's much better, but I'm hoping it's going to get tons better.
Yes. I just got my total vaccination, by the way. So, and Teresa's about to get it, so it's really exciting for us. But anyway, at the end of the year, we pray about what we want. The tithes is a given, so we just calibrate that depending on our income. And then generosity beyond that, which is Kingdom Builders, we pray about what the Lord wants to do through us that next year. And then we leave kind of a dynamic in the budget, if you will, to have flexibility so as the Spirit leads us uniquely around whatever the need might be, if it's human trafficking or, a more, or, give clean water, whatever it is, then we just flex and do those kinds of things. But it's a really important spiritual journey. Remember, we're all on a spiritual journey. Marriage is a part of a spiritual journey. It's not the centerpiece. It's a a good marriage is a byproduct of our spiritual journey. That's super, super important.
It really is. And as you continue to walk in your healthy marriage, I think one of the number one areas that is important is forgiveness. Huge. And I would encourage you, like after we're done talking, take each other and hold each other and ask for forgiveness and choose to forgive. Because you know what bitter roots grow? Bitter fruit, and it doesn't taste good. And that bitter fruit will come out into your children. It'll come out of your mouth. You can't help yourself. So keeping yourself from bitterness and walking in forgiveness in your marriage. And again, if it's such a hot topic because your marriage has been broken through infidelity or other things that have happened that are very difficult, go to a marriage counselor. There's hope for you. God wants you to stay married. He loves that. It's the union that he wants. So I would encourage you for forgiveness.
Yeah. And then paying attention to one another's interests, then you find a way to support that interest. Like, I love surfing. And when I was a young man, we were living in Ocean Beach also at the time, and Teresa did this amazing thing for me. I had been looking at this surfboard that was in the front window of the surf shop in OB back in the day. And it was like in the front window. And she actually saved money and bought that surfboard out of the front window for me, which was huge for us. And she just supported me in that kind of thing. Because, surfing is a wonderful thing, but it can be a marriage buster too. I mean, it can get challenging. And there's been times in our marriage where I was surfing too much. And even for a while, I actually quit surfing for several months, as I recall, just to kind of get my priorities right.
Yeah, and that is important. Like when one, and again, if I just act passive aggressive with him every time he went surfing when the kids were little and I needed more help, imagine what that would do. That would be destructive. And that's where Mike can't read my mind. He didn't know that that's what's upsetting me. So I had to say, Mike, sometimes it's really hard when you go surfing every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I had gone back to get my teaching credentials when the kids were little, but communicating that. This is hard for me now. It was okay then, it's not now. And I think that even in that we learned to communicate. Not the easy way necessarily, but we ended up learning how to communicate about it.
Yeah, you had that thought of don't assume or expect your spouse to be a mind reader.
Yes.
I can't expect her to read my mind, and she can't expect me to read her mind.
That's right.
That's really a crazy making way of life.
It is. It is. It is because you know what? Here's a goal. We've been married almost 45 years now. Caring for one another's heart. So what does that look like when you're communicating? How do you care for your other's heart? And it is through like helping them with their interests and what they have, but being honest about things and caring for their heart, not name calling, but being kind to one another, the fruit of the Spirit. So if you get rid of that bitter roots in you, you can have that beautiful fruit of the Spirit and really care for your husband's heart, your wife's heart. I love caring for Mike's heart. I love seeing him walking in joy. It doesn't feel good if he's feeling sad, and the cause is our relationship. And that's when we've gone into counseling. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, and one of the other values I would like to share is that, Ephesians 4:29, I think it is, says, "Don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what's helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it will benefit those who will listen." So we made a pledge very early in our marriage where we don't name call and we don't cuss at each other. We don't, like I did that right out the gate, like 4 months into the marriage. I called her and that was a game changer moment for us. So again, your words matter. They'll put fresh water on a plant, or they'll burn it to smithereens. So I would challenge you with regard to that in your marriage. And then prayer is such a key to communication. 1 Thessalonians says to us, Paul writes, to pray without ceasing. And so years ago, we developed the habits of morning prayer walks. We pray together often. We don't just pray for each other, we pray with each other all the time. If we're, if she's in Austin and I'm here or whatever, we'll call each other regularly, pray for each other on the phone with each other, ask what each other's prayer needs are. We practice, long time ago, we learned the discipline of practicing the presence of the Lord. And so praying throughout the day, no matter what you're doing, because God is present there. And, for us, a lot of our lives were appointments. So we learned the discipline of praying between appointments. As you end one appointment, have a little prayer where you lift up the next appointment so that you'll be able to serve that person well, whatever. The whole thing of driving home from work, how we would have to pray on our way home from work so that when we hit the house, we were in a spiritual mode, kind of.
Yeah. I think this is super important. Mike and I both worked. I had a career as a teacher, and then I came on staff at Newbury, where I was for 20 years. But when I was teaching high school and had young children, I was teaching college and had young children, you know what? That was kind of hard for me. And so I didn't want to just come home and be beautiful for my husband. My prayer, too, is, God, let me be what my children need. Let me be what my husband needs. Let me help to have a house that's joyful, even working full-time and being a pastor's wife and those different roles that I was in. If I wasn't a woman after God's heart and all of that, then I wasn't really being what God wanted me to be.
Yeah, and all of that is crucial to our whole life journey. Of course, she got her undergrad degree in business and education, and then got her graduate degree in clinical Christian counseling, and now she's doing her PhD in biblical studies. So it's just been an amazing journey that we've had together, and all of it kind of plays into our spiritual life and our spiritual story. And when it comes to communication, because I want to talk about sex for a few minutes, when it comes to our sex lives are a fruit. Okay? Like your sex life is the garden of your love life, if you will. You have to tend it. You have to communicate with each other with regard to it. And I want you to think of your sexuality in marriage from a concept of stewardship, how we're stewards made for each other by God. This is part of creation, the creation order. The Lord said, it is not good for a man to be alone, so I'll make a helper suitable for him. And so we just learned very early on that we needed to communicate our sexual needs to and wants to each other. And then that changes over time, of course, because now we've been married for 45 years, we're older, everything changes in the different stages of life. And you can't be a mind reader. You cannot do it. You have to communicate with each other. Tell each other what you need, like when it comes to frequency in sex and, like how often you want to have sex. Talk about that. Positions you enjoy or don't enjoy. What makes you comfortable and uncomfortable? And it should cover everything from lubricants to toys to, wear, like in the house. I like to call it creativity with sensitivity. You got to remember, in the garden before the fall, Adam and Eve were totally naked, making love, having sex outside, wherever. There's a tremendous freedom to be creative, yet sensitive. Remember, I'm made to meet her needs. She's made to meet my needs. And that's huge.
Yeah, I think a big part in this, too, is really having, like Mike had said, the great communication between each other about your needs, how often, your frequency. And ladies, I want to speak to you right now, and I just want to say, no one else gets to do this with your husband.
Yeah.
Okay? You want a healthy marriage? This is what you got to offer your husbands. Husbands, this is what you got to offer your wives. So again, if this is a hot topic, go into counseling. Should be one of the most beautiful things. No one else gets to do this with your spouse. Only the two of you. This is sacred. God's word tells us to keep our marriage bed holy. And in order to keep it holy, we need to meet that need of one another on a sexual basis. Plus, it makes you much closer to one another. You will draw closer when you have a healthy sex life. And it's fun, Like there were a time when it wasn't fun, when I was nursing babies. And so, but I had to be honest with Mike. I'm like, Mike, this isn't you. Let me just pray for a few minutes because someone's been latched to me all day. And so we worked through that, but that's what you need to do. Have healthy conversations, have a great and fun sex life, make it fun.
Yeah, and I had no idea. So I needed her again to tell me, what her needs were sexually. We had to work on communication about our sex life because we just came at it from very different vantage points. And there was very little, information available in those days. And you just kind of had to carve it out and talk with each other and communicate with each other, so that the end result was you just had a positive sex life.
Yeah, can I say one thing more about sex? Because I think this is so important. That is that I had to learn that if I said no to Mike, that hurt his feelings. He really felt rejected. And so we had to process through that. And that's why I had to take ownership of what was going on with me, so that, and have conversations and have healthy conversations with you about it.
Yeah.
That's kind of one of the areas I had to grow in.
And that great book that probably many of you have read, if you haven't, it's a tremendous resource, Enrich's Love and Respect, how they talk about refusing sex to your husband, certainly, is like standing on his air hose. And he can only last so long before he's got to get air. So just that, the way they deal with that in the book is just really, really helpful. And that's what God wants for us. He wants you to have a tremendous sex life all the way through your years. Now that's going to change. That's going to change and evolve, just like a garden. It's like rose bushes that grow and are wonderful, 20 years out, 40 years out. They're amazing, but you have to tend to them. And Teresa's come up with this statement of choosing to live in the miracle.
Yeah, it's what I mean by that is that look around in your marriage or whatever's going on in your life, but we're talking about marriages. Look in your marriage right now. What's the miracle in it? Maybe you guys are hanging on it with a string of thread, but that's the miracle. Maybe it's that your communication is great right now, but you're unemployed. The miracle is that you have good communication. Find what is good, lean on, choose to walk in that miracle piece, choose to let that be what your eyes are upon with the Lord, and God will do great things. I promise you, God's in it, He loves you, He's for you as a couple. And I want to go ahead and close us in prayer right now. Would that be okay? So Lord God, we thank you for the miracle of marriage and what can come out of marriage and how we get to be there for one another, Lord Jesus. And I pray, Holy Spirit, that if there are people here today that are sitting next to their spouse, they will hold hands right now. They will make a choice to forgive all the past, start fresh and anew today. Let today be the beginning of the rest of their lives together. Lord, I pray for those, God, who have been wounded, that you will heal the wounds because you are the great healer. So anoint our marriages, God. Bless our marriages, Father. I pray that people will forgive one another. And I also pray, very importantly, that whatever, maybe the miracle is that you taught them something today, that they heard something that's what they needed to hear today. That's the miracle to hold on to. So bless each of the marriages, Father. Anoint them with your Spirit, Father. Let us always hear your voice. And we thank you in your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Hi, welcome to our first panel of the day. We're going to have several of these today, and excited to get to do this. My name's Carter Moss. I'm the pastor of our New Break Ocean Beach campus, and to talk about marriage, I'll let you know I've been married 24 years now. 24, we got 3 kids. Got an awesome panel here with me, Mike and Claire Kuipers. Great to have you guys. Been married almost 28 years, right at 28, 3 kids as well. So you're a few years ahead of me. Your kids are a little older. Yeah, and Amy Elliott here as well. And Amy, how long have you been married? Yeah, 17, and 2 kids, one at a baseball game as we speak.
That's right.
Hey, all right.
Baseball game.
Yeah, awesome. Well, and we wanted to represent kind of different kind of walks of life as well. Mike's been Navy much of your career. Claire's been nurse as well. Amy, marriage and family therapist, Princeton, having your own practice and all that stuff. All right, cool. That's good enough. And I've been at New Break for a long time as well, but that's a lot of years of collective marriage wisdom if you add that all up together. So excited to get your insights, and feel free to jump in on any of these. Got some questions that some we came up with, some other people kind of turned in, and so let's tackle them. First one, this is a great question. We got married young. We're growing and changing as we get older. That happens. So how do we continue to pursue the other person when we're both so different than who we fell in love with? So if we're changing, how does our marriage need to change then?
I'll start.
Yeah. Start us out.
Never shy to start. So as we grow and develop, one of the things that we found to be really important in our lives is to be a student of our spouses. And we've led marriage studies for a number of years. And one of the things that early on we learned and had to really grow into is that we're different people, and that those differences can cause stress and they can cause friction in our marriages, and we can look at them as obstacles. But instead, a better way to look at them is that these are strengths that we have and how God designed us, right? And so we made it an effort to celebrate our differences at any opportunity that we could, because in God's grand plan for our lives and the reflection of His love in our marriages, right, it's those differences that create opportunities for us to experience His love and to practice humility and grace in our marriages. So, and as our marriages grow and develop, those are just more opportunities to learn about how God created us differently and how together we can fulfill His purpose in our lives.
Yeah, so for instance, I'm very introverted and Mike is very extroverted. I can be extroverted, but for the most part, I like quiet time. And so I think, just as Mike's saying, getting to know each other, so studying each other and saying it's okay that maybe Claire doesn't always want to go to all the functions that we're invited to. And we can just, I think the other thing is seeing the good that comes from, something that's a strength maybe in someone else, instead of looking at it as like, oh, they're so different from me. But that's actually a good thing, that he's social and he can kind of pull me out sometimes of my shell.
Oh, that's really helpful. I'm glad you mentioned the idea of giving each other lots of grace, because that's part of it. I think I felt like 24 years in, I should finally have this pretty much down by now. And I've had therapist friends saying, no, actually, you have to keep relearning it because we keep changing. Right. So exactly like you guys said. So that's helpful. I know, like for us, our love languages have both even kind of changed over time. So, yeah.
And I would just add, as you mentioned, I'm a marriage and family therapist, and so I do a lot of premarital counseling. And I tell them from the beginning, great marriages don't just happen. They are intentional. Right, and I'll repeat that. Great marriages don't just happen, they're intentional. And so even like Mike and Claire were just saying, with the introvert-extrovert thing, you could easily go down the path of, my spouse doesn't want to leave, my spouse doesn't want to do anything, they're no fun, versus asking questions. What do you need? How do you regroup? What do you need so that you're ready to recharge when we do go to this party together or go out together or do this thing? But it's really intentionally leaning in toward your spouse, finding out more about them every day as you grow and change, because it's not just going to happen on its own.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's really good. Yeah, that idea, like Mike mentioned, be a student of your spouse. And as Amy's saying, but keep being a student. Don't make mistakes like I do. I'm like, but 10 years ago, you used to always like this, right? It's like, continue to be a student of them. So I want to ask a couple that are just super specific for each of you. For you guys, just since we have so many military couples in San Diego and people even tuned in around the country, and you guys have been through a lot of that, how has that affected your marriage? Do you have any tips for people that are in the military, and that I know that might involve moving, having to constantly recreate new friendships? What have you kind of learned through that?
Yeah, I'll start with that. It's a challenging environment. Marriage is challenging enough as it is when you have two people who are different, right, and trying to together live out their lives, and if you have kids, to parent those kids. And then, the military life throws in a couple of different additional challenges. Oftentimes separation, a lot of uncertainty associated with, hey, my spouse, it could be the husband or the wife going to conflict, right? And what is that going to mean for our family? So there's anxiousness leading up to those kinds of deployment that happen. And then you spending a lot of time away, right, from each other. We're a little bit older, and so, our experiences didn't afford some of the technology that is available today. So there were lots of times when we didn't talk for months at a time, which we couldn't. We had to communicate via letter. and the like. But I think the important things, the tips that we had learned growing into these, and we had to learn these over many years, is, leading up to those times of separation, being intentional about spending extra time together, talking about different roles that how the roles were going to change, and renewing our commitments to one another, leading up to those, and then returning also. And Claire, maybe you want to share about some of the things we did.
Yeah, I was
coming
going to
back.
say, I think that's the hardest part for me anyway, as the military spouse back home, right? Is you have a lot of times you have to take on the role of the other person while they're gone, right? So I think the adjustment sometimes, just giving each other grace again in saying, like when he would come back from deployment, just to take time to adjust to the way maybe I was doing things that may have been different from the way he was doing it when he left. And then I think also just the ups and downs, right? So sometimes there would be, they're leaving on this date, but now they're not leaving on this date. And just being flexible and being able to adjust and speak clearly to one another. I think one of the things that was always hard for me was when we were getting ready to deploy, just mentally. So I think he learned to give me time away to prepare mentally to be in that dual role.
And I would say also then just coming back, right? We were intentional about spending time together to reconnect and understand one another, and approaching that from not having expectations about, this is the way it needs to be because that's the way it was before, but learning from one another again and again, this opportunity that we have to discover our spouse again, which was really great.
That's really helpful. Thanks. That's good. Yeah, you kind of hear the themes there, right? Continue to learn by each other, a lot of grace, a lot of being very flexible, and that makes a ton of sense. So thanks. Amy, one for you. Let's talk about conflict. We don't have to get in a conflict. We'll just talk about conflict. When couples are dealing with conflict in marriage, I mean, most of us haven't really, but other couples. No, I'm just
Other
kidding.
people. We've read it in books.
Yeah, I've read about it. I've seen it on movies.
Yeah.
What are some common mistakes, though, that couples make when going into conflict, and what's the better way to handle it?
To do that, yeah. So there are these two doctors, the doctors Gottman, and that are huge in the marriage research field, and they do some really good research about couples who are strong and are doing well, and couples who are struggling. And there's some common themes in the couples who are struggling, and I think they appear in all of our marriages, so none of us are exempt from this. But one of them is defensiveness. And so defensiveness really gets in the way of connection and working through and repairing relationship. And so I would say that the antidote to defensiveness is owning your stuff, knowing when you need to take responsibility, because even if you think you're fully right, if you hurt your partner, you hurt your partner. And that's the repair that needs to be made, right? And so we can deal with, this is how I got here, this is why I thought this, later. Right now, I hurt you and I'm really sorry that I hurt you, right? And so defensiveness, I would say, and I would challenge any marriage that tries to tell me there's no defensiveness there. We're human beings with ego, right? Contempt is kind of the step up from defensiveness that you really have to watch for. And that's when one partner sort of mocks or belittles. It's the eye roll, it's the sarcasm, it's basically making your partner feel about this big. And you might get used to it so you don't notice you're doing it anymore. And what's happening is you really want your partner to step up and be everything, and you're telling them at the same time you're not good enough. I don't know about you, but I don't step up real well when I feel like I'm falling short. And so it works against what the couple is actually wanting. And the antidote to that would be creating a culture of gratitude. I love how you did this. Thank you for doing this. And of course, brain research shows us that the more we focus on what we're grateful for, the neuroplasticity of our brain actually changes, rewires, so that we're more likely to notice the positive things. And so if you create in your home, I'm going to notice 10 things my spouse does today, I guarantee those 10 things get easier to see every single day. And then I would just add, the word grace has been used a lot, and I think that that's a really, really important piece. We have to assume the best. When we get mad at our spouse, it's because we think they're trying to hurt us. But when we back up and slow down, this person loves us. They're not out to get us. And when we think they are, we're defensive, we're contemptuous. But when we really assume, like, hey, I bet they didn't mean it that way, we can repair a lot more quickly.
Yeah, no, that's That's really helpful. Thanks. Yeah, I think it's a phrase maybe out of the Love and Respect book, but it says to try to move from assume the worst to believe the best kind of thing, kind of like what you're saying. When I see that they left their clothes on the floor again, assuming the worst, they're out to get me. They love to punish me. Believe the best is, man, they must just be really busy, tired, and overwhelmed. Just kind of learning to do that. Well, one more kind of conflict related question for anyone would be, how do we de-escalate? Then, like when you're in the conflict and emotions are going up, what are any practices we can do to help kind of de-escalate that so we can talk through it?
Yeah, we can talk about what we try to do practically with that. And I mean, the reality is that when we have emotions, whether one person has emotions or both persons have emotions, our brains don't think very well, and we tend to say things that we may regret later. And so, I mean, a proven fact, we can't actually think very clearly when we have emotions. And emotions are a great thing. I mean, they're created by God, right? And so they definitely help us, but they can also be a detriment at times. And so what we've tried to do is be aware of our emotions and the fact that those things are heightening, and we try to pause at that juncture to say, hey, this might be a red flag for us. Before we say something we don't really mean, let's take a pause and allow ourselves to pray and think clearly. Romans 12:2 comes to mind. It says, don't be transformed by the renewing of our minds, right? So that we can test and approve what God's good, pleasing, and perfect will is. And that's taking our thoughts captive and allowing us the space and the opportunity to be able to think and then communicate clearly how we're feeling. Not that we try to bury those emotions, but try to discover what's underneath them.
And I think the easy thing to do sometimes is to take a step back and then not come back to the conflict, right? So for me, I sometimes will say, I need to take a break and I need to step away, and I might go take a walk. That's always a good thing. Another thing is writing your thoughts down, really trying. Sometimes for me, it was hard to just clear my head and get past the emotions, right? So writing my thoughts down and then sharing them later. So the key is to come back to it, right? And not just say, I'm going to avoid and we're not going to talk about it anymore.
Yeah, no, really important to mention, because I'm a known conflict avoider, so that's a good challenge for me. Amy, yeah, what would you add?
Well, and just to kind of piggybacking off of that, that whole idea that our brain, what happens is when our brain engages in that emotional part, right, that it's the fight or flight response, and what happens is our brains get hijacked. We actually don't have access to the prefrontal cortex, which is judgment and reasoning and all of the good stuff. And so it's like having a great toolbox. I've been to therapy, I have all my tools, and the tools are locked in the garage. Right? And so you might know the tools, but you don't have access to them at that point. And so what these two are describing is, we call it the tag out, right? I just need to figure out what I think. I'm going to come back in 10 minutes. I'm going to come back. Usually 10 minutes is not long enough. I'm going to come back in a half hour. I'm going to come back at 3 o'clock today. I'm going to come back at 5:30. What that does is it marks for the other person, you can relax. We're going to talk about this, right? So the other person doesn't need to lean in and talk and make it fixed right now. It's like, okay, we're coming back. And then, of course, the key is you got to come back and you have to talk it through. And during that time, Claire is talking about you're not thinking or devising ways to get back at your spouse or make your case during that break. It is, how do I really re-regulate myself? How do I take deep diaphragmatic, those fat belly breaths, so that my brain gets the signal to calm down? How do I journal? What am I doing to re-regulate myself so my frontal cortex is back online so that I can actually speak with my spouse from a place that I mean it?
No, that's really good. I've also learned to pick good timing to have conflicts, not when you're rushing out the door, not when you're super hungry or super overly tired.
Nothing good happens after 10 o'clock.
Ah, yes.
No
Before
important
10 p.m.
conversations after 10 p.m.
Yes, smart, yeah. Well, we want to make sure we tackle at least one sex and intimacy question. Don't worry, none of our kids are watching this, so that's okay. I'm going to pretend that in my head. No, we know that couples that have been married longer, it's easy for sex and intimacy to kind of go out the door or to hit certain stages. Newborn babies can affect it, toddlers, teenagers, kind of all the stages. All sorts of reasons, stuff can get in the way. any ideas of practical ways to prioritize sex and intimacy kind of as the kids are growing up? So any tips you'd like to share?
I'll let Claire do that.
I think,
Let's make Claire start.
Yeah. Thanks. I think, there's different stages. For Mike and I, I think the hardest time was when the kids were young, right? And you're just being pulled. And as a mom, I was definitely giving a lot of my energy, mental, physical, to my kids. And I was making that a priority. And I think one thing I learned was really trying to set aside the time early on in the day. So mentally just saying to myself, so Mike might say, hey, maybe we haven't been intimate in a while. Could we try to, spend some time together tonight? And just me not backing away from that, but just giving giving myself a chance to prepare for that, I guess you could say, or just, take time for myself so that I feel ready to then give to him. And I think the other thing he brought up recently was, to look at it as like it's something you can enjoy, right? And as a when we go to work out at the gym, sometimes we're like, okay, I got to go work out at the gym, but it ends up with a really good result. So
lots of endorphins, right? Get
That's
produced, and when we don't feel like it, just getting into it really provides an opportunity for us to connect. And I would say for us, especially when you have a lot of demands pulling on you, right? You need to be super intentional about scheduling. And I know that scheduling sex may sound like, oh, how boring, that could be. But actually having it and placing it as a priority for the health of the marriage, ultimately for the health of the family, is so important. So we would often put it in there. We put it in our calendar. Okay, we know we're going to try to, at least, things happen. So it doesn't always, we have to move things around, but at least we're being intentional about wanting to strengthen that part of our marriage.
Yeah. That's really wise.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, and I'm laughing on several levels back here because, Claire, you said when your kids were little. Oh, I would say teenage years because they're around all the time with COVID, right? Nobody's going anywhere. Bedrooms are all right next to each other. Everyone goes to bed at the same time. So, yeah, it's funny to think when they were little, we just tucked them in and shut the door, right? So that feels a little different now. But I agree with, the gym analogy is a great one. You don't feel like doing it, do it anyway. And I would say that we need to be thinking of intimacy and sex just as this really beautiful, broad area. And so it's not just having sex and the culmination of that, but it's asking your partner what they need intimacy wise from you. So maybe the wife or the husband would really just appreciate a massage with no sexual intent, and knowing that sex is not happening at the end often releases them to actually enjoy it. And so then the next night could be something that the other person would like. And so I would just encourage conversation around sex and what each person needs so that both needs are getting met.
That's great. Kind of fits the theme you guys hit on earlier of got to keep learning about them, learn in this area what they need and want. Keep showing lots of grace, keep being flexible, with those. That's good. All right, well, probably time for one more, and I thought this would be a great one to end on. You can share about some of the resources too, but what are any best practices you've done in your marriage? You already hit on a few, but on any topic and kind of any area, any other best practices in your marriage, maybe ones that you're like, I wish we would have started earlier, sooner, maybe ones that you'd give advice to new couples that are engaged, like do this right away, don't take as long as we did to learn it. But yeah, just any good practices that have helped communication or fun or really any aspect of your marriage.
Yeah, I'll start with one. We have several things, and these are things that we've learned from others as well. And so I'd start off by saying, have people in your lives that can love you and support you and encourage you in your marriages. That was so important for us. That people that can be mentors that you can look up to. So we learned from them. And hey, what did you do in these kinds of situations? One of the ones that we implemented early on. We had kids relatively soon after we got married, after a couple of years, and so time before kids was pretty easy to talk all the time. We just kind of came naturally, and then when kids enter the picture, all of a sudden your time goes away, and so we had to be intentional about setting time aside. So we have couch time every single day, where we said, all right, mom and dad are going to sit on the couch and we're going to talk. And hey, kids, during this time frame, you're going to be occupied doing other things, because our time together and connecting with one another and understanding one another is really important. And so that then moved into family time, and then you could talk about family time, family meetings.
Family meeting, I think planning was a big one for us. We had 3 kids and 3 different or multiple activities, and just taking the time to set for the week. We didn't do it necessarily perfectly every time, right? And there's things that you have to adjust in the week, but really looking ahead. So we would have family meeting on Sunday, and our kids would kind of grumble through it initially, but then it got to be an opportunity for them to express themselves, but also for us to really be a team. And that's one other thing when we were talking about conflict, and just, things that we learned along the way would be, looking at each other as a team, and really, he is my teammate in this, and we are working together, right, to be a family and support one another. So
That's really good. Thanks. Amy, any?
I would say one of our best practices happened after COVID, and we started walking every night. My husband and I would just leave the house and go for a walk every night. And of course, this started when the world was shut down and you could do nothing else but walk. But it was really such a great time of connection, and you're moving and you're connecting about the day and you're asking questions. And so if you can get alone time like that, I would encourage that. I think that the best marriage advice I could ever give is be curious, right? And so just ask all those questions. Be curious about why your partner is doing what they're doing, why they feel how they're feeling, what they're thinking about this situation or that. I have usually it's husbands, but it can be wives too, in my practice, where they'll say, I don't know what to say. And I'll think, just pick any word in the sentence she just said, any word, and ask a question about it, right? And really that works, because people want to talk, they want to share. So just be curious. It'll really help your marriage.
That's great. If I could just add to that, we actually had a couple of props here, because we want to learn about our marriages and we want to get better at them, and it's this constant growing process for us. So Amy just mentioned, ask questions, and as husbands, sometimes you're like, I don't know what to ask, but so we have these little questions in this is our date night question container, and when we don't know what to ask, we'll pull out one of these. And we'll discover one another. These are great questions. They're open-ended, and they can...
Did you write those questions?
No, I didn't. No, there's a lot of... That's a good one. There's lots of different resources that are out there. Many companies do this, and you can find it on, anywhere. Google it on the internet. There's just lots of these questions that you can ask. And so when we get stuck, it's a great way to, get the conversation started. And then you mentioned the Eggerichs book earlier. That's Love and Respect, and when a couple of our other favorites, we're going through one right now, which is No More Perfect Marriages. This is Mark and Joseph.
Words to say when you're in conflict too.
Right.
Okay. Like I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. And then all of us like to think that we know everything about sex, but I can tell you that this was a huge learning opportunity. Look how thick this book is. And it's called The Gift of Sex by Clifford and Joyce Penner. It's written in the 80s and still totally applicable today. So I'd recommend those resources.
Yeah, thank you. Super, super practical. Yeah, and that was so good. Be really curious and be really intentional. Hopefully you heard that over and over and over again. We're not just going to drift into healthy, amazing marriages. All that we shared was about being super intentional, super grace-filled. So, thanks so much. Thanks for spending time.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. I know it's super helpful to people, so we appreciate it. Hope you get restful time with your spouses today and get to hang out today. So thanks for listening in. Off to our hosts.
Wow, thank you so much. I mean, Pastor Mike, Pastor Teresa, you had Amy, you had the Kuipers, you had Pastor Carter. I mean, that was so powerful.
So good.
Right? What did you take away?
Oh man, so much stuff. I wrote down notes because I just so much stuff. So I loved the love languages piece from Pastor Mike and Teresa.
So good.
The mistakes and conflict part,
right?
Defensiveness, contempt. I was like, oh man, I think I've done a couple of those for sure.
Right.
Yeah, and then just the be curious, that, so powerful. I love that part of it for sure. What
Always
about you?
asking questions. Yeah, I loved that intimacy may not begin in the bedroom, right? Maybe starts on the couch. having that couch conversation. Just say, how was your day? You know, what can I do to help you? What do you need from me? That's so powerful. So I'm going to take that home and definitely can grow further into being a student of my spouse. So I'm excited.
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
Well,
what do we have next?
We're going to do a giveaway, you guys.
Oh, let's do it.
Yes.
Let's do it.
Okay, this one is going to be a $120 gift card to Blue Apron.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm
that's
so
good.
excited.
Blue
So-
Apron, they send you the food, you cook it, and you're a
Yeah.
chef.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, perfect.
That's
Perfect.
kind of how it goes. Yeah.
That's what I need.
So it's $120. You can use it towards any of their meal plans. And, you know, my husband and I got this gift card recently, and we had a blast cooking these
So
meals.
cool.
Yeah. So we're a little bit like, we're foodies a little bit. So it was fun for us to change up what we normally cook
Right.
on a weeknight and to do it together. And they make it so easy. You don't have to know how to cook.
Okay,
To
good.
do this.
Then I can do it.
Yes,
Okay.
anyone can do it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Because I can make a salad. That's about it.
Yeah, it was kind of like a cooking class, right?
Okay.
Like for example, did you know that you're supposed to season your food several times throughout the cooking process rather than just hitting it at the end with salt and pepper?
No, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
we didn't either, but
Yeah.
we do now.
I just put it on once on the plate.
Yeah, Blue Apron told us so we know. Yeah, so yeah, it's gonna be a great gift card, and so here's how you're gonna win it. Okay,
Yeah.
you guys have to like, so hit that thumbs button, subscribe,
Okay.
turn on notifications, do all the YouTube things for this
Right.
channel, right? And then comment below with the name of your favorite local restaurant from wherever you live.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's it. We'll pick a winner during the
Yeah.
next session, and we'll let you guys know who it is when we get back here.
Oh, that's awesome. So make sure you follow that. It was like, it was subscribe, turn on the notifications, and put your favorite restaurant at the place that you live. All right, I can do that. I'm going to do that right now, too.
You can't win.
Okay. Well, speaking of our next session, I have the privilege of announcing who's speaking next, right? And this woman is my wife, my best friend, my partner in crime. She is beautiful, and she's also extremely wise. And so just through her years of experience being able to help with teens and adolescents and adults and young adults and being able to see how she could impart some wisdom with them on how they can develop something called secure attachments. And
So important.
it's something that we all need. And she's going to talk more and more about that. And she knows so much more than I could. So I'm just going to stop talking because she knows more than I do.
Amen.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yes. Well, we have a couple minutes, right? We have about 2 minutes just
Yeah.
for a quick break. So what's some things they can be doing?
I mean, I'm gonna get my coffee refill going.
Okay, there you
so,
go.
You know,
Yeah,
that's something you could do. Maybe hit the restroom, and then we'll see you back in a couple minutes.
that's right. All right, you have 2 minutes before you get to hear from Nikki Witherspoon.
Why does it matter how we interact with and react to the people in our lives? Today, I want to talk to you about attachment, how we develop secure attachments. So this idea of attachment, what is it? So attachment is a strong, deep emotional bond that's created typically between child and a caregiver that helps the children develop socially, emotionally, physically, cognitively, all these important areas. So what happens in our childhood, how we develop, how we learn, the things we're taught directly impact us in adulthood. It impacts us as we're adolescents. What we learn as children is hugely important for our adult lives. So what is secure attachment? What does it look like? So first, I want to talk about what secure attachment looks like in childhood. So children who are securely attached have this very calm confidence to them. They like to walk out and explore, see the world, take chances, make risks, because they feel confident in themselves. The child also feels confident in their caregiver. They feel confident that they can go out and explore and do their thing, and the caregiver is going to be there. They're going to be present. They're going to be welcoming them with open arms. Securely attached children also have an easier time regulating their emotions. So what that means is if something really challenging happens and they get really upset, they have an easier time returning back down to baseline. They're not going to be distressed for a significant amount of time. So securely attached children are confident, easy to calm down, and just live their life in the best way possible. So what does it look like in adulthood? It's very similar. You're going to see a lot of the similar things that you see in childhood. So in adulthood, you're going to see this calm confidence. These adults who have high self-esteem. They believe in their own abilities. They know they can conquer things and take on challenges. And this is a really important one. I'm sure there's a lot of us who struggle with this one. But securely attached adults are going to be comfortable sharing their feelings openly with others. Wow, that one's a little scary, right? So that means they're comfortable telling someone, hey, I'm feeling really awful today. I'm really upset. Or, hey, I'm feeling awesome today. I had a great day. So this idea of openly sharing emotions because you feel confident that your emotions matter and they're important. Another huge thing we see in securely attached adults is people who can enjoy close, intimate relationships. So they have a trust in their relationships. They have a confidence in their relationships. They're able to share and ask questions and be connected in a deep and meaningful way. It's a huge one. So we talked a little bit about what attachment looks like in childhood, what it looks like in adulthood. We're going to see lots of similarities and lots of overlap. I want to talk about just some of the general benefits of secure attachment. So a huge one, mental health. So people who are securely attached tend to have less significant mental health challenges. Now, this doesn't mean if you're securely attached, you're never going to feel anxious or you're never going to feel depressed. All it means is it's not going to be as severe or as challenging as it could be if you were more insecurely attached or had some other things going on. So secure attachment is huge for keeping mental health high. Another huge part of secure attachment is it gives this deeper sense of purpose and meaning, this direction, this guidance, this, I know why I'm here, I know what I need to do, I know why I'm important, I know about my life. Here's what I want to do, I'm going to go do it. So it's this quiet, calm sense of purpose and meaning. Two other really important ones that secure attachment is going to impact is this idea of resiliency and adaptability. So resiliency, this means, as we all know, life's going to come, things are going to hit you hard, they're going to knock you down. Resiliency is the ability to get back up even when really challenging things happen, even when consistent challenging things happen. So people who are higher in resiliency have the ability to keep getting back up even with all of the challenges in life. And adaptability, I'll say this is a struggle for me. Adaptability is the ability to shift and change with the new things that come your way. We know life is full of surprises. There's all sorts of different things that we just can't anticipate, and we can adapt, we can shift. So people who are securely attached have high resiliency and high adaptability. So we talked about secure attachment. I do want to talk about the other side of things just a little bit so you can have an idea of what the full spectrum looks like. So there's lots of different types of secure attachment in the research. Today I'm just going to focus on the two common types. So secure attachment lies over here, and we have insecure attachment. So there's two primary types, anxious and avoidant. So I'm going to talk about our anxious friends first. So when you think about the anxious insecure style, they tend to be very deep in their feelings. They operate from a place of feelings. They're deeply connected to their feelings. They feel all the things. They sometimes have a little bit of a challenge with the thoughts, the cognitions. So they're going to focus on the feelings, avoid the thoughts. They tend to be a little preoccupied with self. So what that means is they're always focused on, well, I might be the reason this is going wrong. This might be my fault. I think it's me. I'm the impact here. Preoccupied with self. They tend to hold on very tightly to the past, remember past hurts, feel those past hurts as if they're happening right now. They're very connected and hold on to those past experiences. They also put a very strong emphasis on problems. So what this means is, oh my gosh, this problem came up. I don't know what to do. It's too big. I can't handle it. They're very focused on that, this idea that the problem is too big. I'm not capable. And like I said, they dismiss thoughts. So for our anxious people, I want you to think, what feels bad is bad. Let me say that again. What feels bad is bad. So now let's talk about our avoidant friends. So these ones tend to be super in their heads. So all the thoughts, all the cognitions, super disconnected from emotions. I'm thinking about things, I'm processing things, I'm not attached to how I feel about this situation. They tend to kind of move away from the past. So, yeah, it happened in the past, it's good, I'm fine, we're moving forward, we're living our life. They tend to also dismiss self. Yeah, I'm not super important. Yeah, it's just me, I'm good, whatever, I'm not impactful. They also tend to minimize problems. Oh yeah, I lost my job, no big deal, we're good, we're fine, moving on. So you can see there's a lot of conflict between our two styles, right? They operate very differently. So here we have what feels bad is bad with our anxious friends. Over here, we have what I think is bad is bad. So it's really important to know these avoidant and anxious attachment styles, because as you can imagine, if your good friends or partner or child or sibling has the opposite insecure attachment from you, it might cause some conflict or some clashing. So it's really important to be aware of insecure attachment and secure attachment so you can recognize it in yourself. So we talked about all this stuff, insecure attachment, all that cool stuff. Now let's talk about what you can do to develop secure attachment. So I'm going to start in childhood because typically attachments are developed in childhood. Just because they develop in childhood doesn't mean they can't change over time or morph or improve or grow, but that is when the core of attachments is built. So it's really important to talk about. So I want to focus on talking to the parents and caregivers for a second. So attachment theory has tons and tons of acronyms. I'm not going to throw them all at you because that's ridiculous. Today we're just going to focus on one. So it's R. A-R-E, and that stands for accessible, responsive, and engaged. So I want to break these down a little bit, and these are super applicable in adulthood, adolescence, with partners, friends, coworkers, anyone. These are just good skills to have. So accessible, be available. So if we're thinking about this from a parenting perspective, this does not mean you have to be ready to answer every single beck and call your child has. Not every single mommy or daddy or I need a drink, I want to play, come hang out with me. You don't have to meet every single one. That's a huge expectation. But we do want you to be available. When they really need you, your child, your friend, your sibling, they need to know that they can access you, that you are available, accessible. It's our A. And our R, responsive. So this is responding to all needs. So if we're thinking about parents, this is responding to your child's physical, emotional, social, cognitive, all of those needs. So some needs are a little bit easier to respond to. Physical needs, those might be pretty easy, right? Food on the table, clothes, we're good. Sometimes emotional needs are really hard to meet. I don't know about anyone else, but I don't like seeing anyone I love in distress. Sad, upset, it's really hard to see that. So sometimes I just kind of want to, okay, you're fine. Let's just make that thought, that feeling go away. We're happy, let's be happy. But that's actually super detrimental, especially for children, because what that teaches them is your emotions are not okay, they're not safe. I don't like when you show them. I want to make them go away. So kids can start to learn, maybe I should only be happy, even if inside I'm not feeling happy. So engage, responsive. How can we respond to all of the needs our child has? How can we respond to all of the needs our partner has, our friends have? Responsive. And our E, engaged. So I may step on some toes here, but engaged. This means put your phone down, shut the laptop, turn the TV off. Engaged. How can you fully, purposefully, and meaningfully engage with the person across from you? With your children, maybe this means getting on the floor and playing dolls for 2 hours, or playing trucks, or playing outside. With a friend, maybe this means sitting and listening intently and letting them know they are the most important person in the room. Engaged. So just how this R applies to childhood and parents and caregivers developing this with their children, it's also super important in adolescence, in adulthood, with friendships, with all types of relationships. Not only for your partner, your friend to give that to you, but you to also reciprocate that. Because we're in charge of ourselves, we can't be in charge of other people. So how are you practicing R? How are the people in your life practicing R? How can you express to them, hey, this is what I need? So I want to talk about 2 more important things having to do with how to develop secure attachment. Like I said, specifically in childhood, but all of this applies to all of the other stages of life. So it's these 2 ideas called secure base and safe haven. So with secure base, I want you to think of this sturdy, firm, solid, immovable foundation. So we can talk about a parent or a caregiver. It's this rock, it's not moving. This allows the child to go out and explore. It teaches them that, I can be independent. I can go try these new things. I can take some risks because I know I have this secure base that's sitting here waiting for me. So safe haven, they're very connected. So with safe haven, the child, caregiver, they're aware, I always have a place to return. I always have a safe spot where I can be comforted, where I can be encouraged, where I can be reassured. Open arms, just waiting. I know it's there. So the best way to think of it is secure base is go out, explore the world, adventure, have fun. And safe haven is I'm sitting here with open arms when you're done exploring. Safe haven and secure base. So like I said, these things are super, super important in adulthood as well. It's going to look different each stage. A 2-year-old is going to need something much different than a 14-year-old. A 14-year-old is going to need something different than a 20-year-old. So it's being aware of what does secure base mean for my person at the stage they're in. Does that mean maybe I let them drive the car on their own? Does that mean, hey, maybe I sit on the couch and wait for them to get home and see if they want to have a conversation, but I don't push too hard. It can mean different things, and it's important for us as individuals to recognize what we need and that secure base and that safe haven so that we can express that to the people in our lives. We can't expect them to read our mind and know what's going on. So I do want to take a second and discuss some of the challenges around secure attachment. So some of you may be sitting here and you may be like, oh my gosh, you just told me all of these crazy things with super high expectations. How am I ever going to meet these? Like, how am I supposed to be accessible and responsive and engaged with my child, with my partner, with my friends? That seems really overwhelming. That's a lot for me to take on. So there's some good news. First of all, you do not have to be perfect. You don't have to be a perfect parent. You don't have to be a perfect friend. You don't have to be a perfect partner. You can make mistakes, respond incorrectly, have challenges, say the wrong thing, do things that maybe aren't super helpful, and your child, your friend, your partner can still develop a secure attachment. So it's not the one time off or the weakness moments or the challenging days. It's who are you over the span of time? Are you trying to live out this R? Are you trying to encourage your children, trying to encourage your friends? Be engaged. It's okay if you make mistakes. I also want to acknowledge a couple other challenges. Sometimes you may have deep wounding from your own childhood. There may have been abuse, neglect, hurt, pain. You may feel like, hey, I'm not securely attached. I don't know how I can develop it or how I can work towards this or how I can even, like, I'm stuck here. I'm stuck. It's not moving. So there is always hope. There is always room for growth. There is always support. There are always resources. For anyone who knows me, I am always going to push therapy. That is the best way to find out more about your own woundings, your own attachment style, and what you can do to progress and grow and not stay stuck. There is hope. I also want to acknowledge the challenge for some parents and caregivers. You may be a mom who's like, hey, I work 60 hours a week just to put food on the table. I can't always be accessible to my child. I don't see my child half the time. Or you may be a spouse that's like, well, I deploy for 9 months. I can't see my partner. I can't see my children. What am I supposed to do? So like I said, it is not a perfect game every time. You're not expected to meet all of these expectations. But I do want to pass off some tangible things that you can do, that your family can do, that you guys can all engage in together. So a huge one, create schedules. I know I use this in my own life. Marcus and I have a date night scheduled. We stick to that date night weekly. Schedules are huge. They're huge for partners, for friends. Hey, every Tuesday, we get coffee. We're gonna hang out, we're gonna talk, we're gonna engage. Create schedules. And be creative with your connection. Connection, especially in the world of COVID, doesn't just have to be face-to-face. We know this. FaceTime, Skype, Zoom, video chat, whatever it is, there's other ways to connect besides sitting face-to-face with people. Be creative. Have conversations. This is a huge one. It's so much more than sitting at a table and saying, hey, how was your day? Good. Yours? Good. Ask questions. Be engaged. Actually care what's going on in the people's lives around you. Be engaged. Have conversations. Create check-in opportunities. Again, living into that emotion. How are you feeling today? What was hard today? What made you sad? What made you excited? Provide comfort. This is a big one. I want to tie it back into that emotion I talked about with children, of teaching them that your emotions are okay. I can handle your emotions. I can teach you how to handle your emotions. They're not scary. So validate, empathize. Hey, it looks like you're really scared. Is there anything I can do to help? Create meaningful engagement. Acknowledge your mistakes. Take a deep breath. There is hope. There are resources. Your church family is here. Therapists are there. we've got you. So seek to better understand your own drive and motivations behind your actions and the actions of others in your lives so that you can create more secure and meaningful connections in your life. Thank you.
All right, you guys, we have our first giveaway winner. Are you ready?
All right, drum roll.
Julie Dawson.
All right.
Oh man, we are so excited for you. $120 towards Blue Apron. It is yours. Check your email later today, the one you used to register for the relationship conference. That gift card is coming your way, and we really hope you guys enjoy your meals.
Well, and if you're like me and you didn't win the gift card,
Yeah, I know.
there's something free for us too. Now, what I love about New Break Church, one of our values is to give it away.
Yep.
In fact, so we're doing that today. We have this great resource called Right Now Media. You may have heard about it before. We like to call it the Netflix of Bible study. You have so many great resources and some world-renowned pastors and speakers and missionaries, evangelists, people that have spent their life discovering more about God and what he has to say about different areas of life. Maybe it's parenting or marriage or just friendships and relationships. So it's such a great resource. It's called Right Now Media, and you can get it right now for free. All you have to do is text Right Now New Break. Right Now is one word to New Break. Right Now New Break to 41411. I'll say it again. 41411. So text Right Now New Break. And what I love about that resource is one of the life groups that I'm part of, our young adults life group, we went through something called the Red Letter Challenge, which was so cool. It just kind of like breaks down and gives you a better foundation and understanding of the Bible, why we read the Bible. What is this idea of Sabbath? What's this idea about giving? Why should I be generous? And it was so cool to see just eyes begin to light up like, oh, wow, this is so powerful. There's so much more to life than just sitting and reading a Bible. So it was such a great resource. And we got that all from Right Now Media. So be sure to check it out. Again, you want to text Right Now New Break to 41411.
Yeah, absolutely. My life group has used some Right Now Media studies as well. We're a couples group, so we did one called Love Talk.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it was really good. You know, we did that probably like 2 years ago, and 2 years later, our life group is still talking about it. We are still talking about that study. So it is full of really, really good stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Cool. Well, we are ready for our next panel. It is called Parenting, Childhood Phases, Sex, and Singleness. Ooh, here we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to have this panel with licensed marriage and family therapist Amy Elliott, who you saw in panel 1, and Nikki Witherspoon, who you just heard from as well. So it's going to be a good one. Let's jump right in with them.
Hey, and welcome back, everyone. Glad you're with us. We have Nikki, who just presented her keynote on attachments. Phenomenal job, Nikki. And Amy Elliott, our resident therapist, here to provide some wisdom. We just love you guys, so you're residents around here. But this panel is all about attachments for you parents, for those who are married, and we even have a couple of questions for our single folks who might be listening. So let's dive right in and talk about attachments. What I love about exploring attachments, and you really talked a lot about it, Nikki, is that it's a style and it's not an identity. It's a preferred style. So can you maybe speak into that, knowing that you and your spouse perhaps might have different styles? How do we help each other move towards kind of a secure style of attachment?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think with everything we learn, there can be this tendency to weaponize. So, oh, well, you're just responding because you're avoidantly attached. Like, that's not helpful for anyone. That's not helpful for your spouse. I think the biggest thing is first that self-discovery that I talked a little bit about. You can't express to your spouse, express to your friend, express to your child what you need if you don't know what you need. So it's important to first, y'all know therapy is going to be the best way to start exploring, like, why do I react this way to stress? Why do I run and hide and not want to talk to my spouse when we have an argument, but they just keep running after me? Like, what is happening here? So starting to understand what's going on inside of you is going to be the first step, and then having that open conversation with your spouse of like, hey, so when I'm really stressed, like, here's what I do. Oh, when you're really stressed, you do that other thing. Okay, how can we work together to make sure this works better and we feel better about our interactions? So self-exploration, self-understanding is a huge one.
No, that's really good. Just on my personal journey and my therapy journey, just exploring my own attachment style has been really helpful. Case in point, a few weeks ago, Kelsey and I, my wife, we were having an argument, and we got in a little bit of conflict. And while she is, saying stuff at me, I literally felt my body posture turn around, and inside, like, I was telling myself, okay, Isaac, it's time to remove yourself from the situation. I just want to go to the living room and sit on the couch. And knowing that I'm an avoidant, like that's my style, really helped me understand how to navigate that situation, because she's anxious. That's her style. And so she's like, why are you turning away? So it just helps in our communication style. So that was really helpful. Let's switch gears maybe and talk a little bit about parenting.
Can I?
Oh, yes.
I just want to jump onto the.
Sorry, Amy.
Oh, well, that's
Didn't
okay.
mean to.
I'll just sit on the side.
Yeah,
No.
no.
No, I was just. You asked the question of how can we help our spouse move towards secure attachment. And while moving towards secure attachment is the work of the individual, right? Everyone has got to do their own work. There are ways that we can communicate with them that fosters safety. And so just like Nikki was saying about that secure attachment comes from knowing you've got a secure base to come back to. We can help be that secure base for our partner. And so if we communicate clearly, if we have good boundaries that we actually communicate and then stick with, that's really helpful to know, oh, this is what they're going to do in this situation. They're going to follow through when they say they are. If we say we're going to show up, we show up. So really being who we say we're going to be helps them to settle in their bodies, right? And so when we get in a fight, we don't give ourselves permission to gaslight other people, right? To make them feel like they're crazy. We don't give ourselves permission to stonewall or just shut down or silent treatment. There's no permission for that. We give ourselves grace to show up and take spaces when we need to. And then I think forgiveness is a really big part of that. We're going to mess up. And so as we navigate the attachment dance, we figure out, okay, I didn't do this right. Can we come together, talk about what happened, and then do it differently next time? And that all of those experiences will really help move it toward a secure attachment.
That's really awesome. Is there a tool that maybe someone's listening right now and they're going, I really want to dive in deeper to discovering my own attachment style? How can they begin that process?
Therapy is my big one.
Therapy. Well, and you kind of know, right? Because if you know from your own family of origin what happened, you know that if you're in a situation where you're really anxiously attached and then you're fearful and then you do something and the person ends up leaving because you're hanging all over them, and it just reinforces, oh yeah, see, people are going to leave. And so you kind of know, or if you're an avoidant and your mantra is, no one's showing up, I'm all on my own, I have to do this alone. So we all have this little sense of how we react or respond. And then, of course, therapy is the best deep dive individually. And then there's lots of, like, the Enneagram is super helpful in knowing, it's not attachment style, but it's who am I? How do I react? What do I do in health? What do I do when I'm not acting from a place of health? So I think those are helpful tools.
Yeah, I know for me, the first time I ever heard about attachment styles, like immediately, I was like, oh wow, like that hit something close. So like, just like Amy's saying, like you will feel you can read a book, you can watch a speech on it, and you're going to feel internally like, yep, that's what I am. That's where I'm sitting right now.
That's helpful. So helpful. You mentioned in your talk that attachment styles are developed from a young age. So let's switch gears and talk a little bit about parenting during the phases of a child. I see you smiling there, Amy. We had a little
I have 2
conversation.
teenagers.
There you go. Teenagers are the best agers, I guess. So let's talk about the different phases and just some practical tips that parents can take away to help develop or move their children towards secure attachment. How do we parent our kids during the different phases, and what do our kids need during those phases?
Yeah, so I've worked a lot with a lot of different ages and ranges of families. And the biggest thing I've noticed that is typically lacking when families are having conflict or struggling to meet each other's needs is this lack of communication. So mom isn't asking teenage daughter what she needs. Teenage daughter isn't communicating what she needs to mom. And it's just kind of this block. They're almost like running circles around each other. Like mom thinks, okay, this is what my teenager needs. And teenager's thinking, you're not giving me what I need. You're giving me exactly what I don't need. So what I've seen is just being able to openly communicate. So it goes back to that self-understanding of I need to know what I need and want from this person so I can express it. And on the other side, I need to ask questions to help this person open up so I can know what they need.
So full disclosure, my mantra of this whole week has been just keep the teenagers alive. Right? Like I keep saying, I will get them through their teen years. I will get them through their teen years. So this is the kind of week, I'm not alone, that many of us are finding ourselves in. And so let me just assure you, you will get them through this alive, right? But it's so hard and you don't know what you don't know. And so I was talking to my 13-year-old yesterday and I said to her, and her friend was there, and I said, so I'm going to be on a panel tomorrow. What do you guys need at this stage in your life? And of course, after we went through all of the clothing items that would be helpful in ushering them through this season, they got to emotional support, that they need emotional support. And so I was thinking about that and thinking that in every stage, I think what's been most helpful is listening to what they're saying, but most especially listening to what they're not saying, because they often don't have the words. And so with littles, you see them tantruming or acting in ways where you just want to discipline them and they're trying to tell you something's wrong, right? And with bigs, you see them tantruming and, right, you see these things still, and it's really trying to lean in, and it's really hard to go to school online. And it's really hard, then mine just went back one day a week, to muster up and have that adrenaline rush and then come home and try to be on to do homework and go to sports, and they're exhausted and they don't have anything left in their little bodies and their systems are overwhelmed. And so I am trying to be better at just listening at each phase to, like I said, what they're saying and what they're not saying, so that I just can come alongside them when I want to lecture or discipline, that I can instead hopefully come alongside and be more supportive and give what they need.
Yeah, there's this amazing book I've read recently. It's called Beyond Behaviors. So it's teaching parents for all ages of kids of like, what is behind this behavior? Like going back to what Amy said, like, yeah, they're tantruming, but what's going on internally? Like, what emotions are they feeling? What's at the core of this? Instead of just focusing on, hey, you're really annoying me today. Like, I need some space. Like, get curious. I think Amy talked about that in her last panel, but I think it's just as important with parents and kids. Be curious, like what's going on inside.
No, that's really great and helpful. On a practical level, because you both mentioned how really this season has heightened the sense of overwhelm that, I mean, our kids are facing. But we face that too, right? You know, we live in a 2-income city. We have crazy packed schedules. How do you create that space to listen when maybe sometimes we're overwhelmed and we can barely listen to our own thoughts and our own emotions? What are some practical things that folks can start doing?
Well, it's funny because as you were asking that question, I'm thinking, well, the first thing we have to do is give ourselves permission to not do it right. Because there are so many demands on us and so many things pulling for our attention and needing FaceTime or needing quality time. And so just knowing that we can't do it all, right? I tell this to women a lot is that you can have it all, you just can't have it at the same time, right? And so this season that we're in is a season. And we have to determine what's most important in this season. And it's going to look different than what's important in next season. And so, you know, with making intentional time for us, our kids are home a lot more because they're Zooming, you know, for school. And so taking time, I make them both breakfast every morning and taking that time to check in with them. And then rides to practices are super important, that there's talk time when you're riding to practice. And if you have a teenage boy, you know that when you're facing forward and not looking at each other in an intense conversation, better conversations happen. And then just it's finding the space. It's not, okay, we're going to take a big Disneyland day. It's, hey, we have 5 minutes and that's good enough. Let's touch base. And I mentioned this in the last panel, but my husband and I started doing walks during COVID, and that has been super helpful for us just to do a daily walk and to check in.
Yeah, Marcus and I really got into that too. COVID, there's some awful things, but some great things too. Yeah, just going more off what Amy said, I think like acknowledging that you're not going to be perfect, it's not possible, and then kind of owning those moments. I remember as a kid growing up, like if my parents apologized, that like changed my life. I was like, wait, I thought you were this like magical being that didn't make mistakes. Now you're telling me like you make mistakes like me. I think that can create really cool moments of connection of like, oh, we're on the same level. We can understand each other. And then just being really curious, like what would be fun for your kids to do? Like all kids have different personalities. Like I know I was a super introverted kid, so going to Disneyland would have been my worst nightmare, but sitting and having breakfast with my parents would have been really fun. So kind of being curious about what does each child need.
I love how you brought in the power of forgiveness and an apology. And I think sometimes as parents, there's this pressure to get it right. And when we do get it wrong, we're not maybe vulnerable enough to be able to say, hey, I'm sorry for yelling at you, or I'm sorry that you saw, that side of me and, I was impatient. We don't really do that. But you keyed in on attachment and how safety and the word secure is really important in attachment styles. And I think like just the power of forgiveness and apology, it creates a safe space for all of us that, hey, as a family, we're going to get this wrong, but there's grace for one another. So I really, really appreciate that a lot.
It also lets kids off the hook from the need to be perfect. So if you apologize, you create space that they don't always have to get it right. Because if we have kids that think they have to be perfect, then it's just one hop, skip, and a jump to I am not good enough, right? And so if we as adults can say, I did not get that right, I'm really sorry, then they can see that being modeled, that mistakes aren't the end of the world, and grow in that.
Good. We had a question come in from the audience. 1 week, my teenager is constantly around us, and the next week, she never comes out of her room and keeps telling us to leave her alone. What's going on?
Well, my magic 8 ball says, no, I mean, I don't know what's going on with your specific teenager, but that is teenagehood in a nutshell, right? It's the ups and downs. You have to remember their little bodies are coursing with hormones, and it's really difficult for them to regulate mood. And so things that we think are no big deal are a huge deal. The fact that, Katie did this and Susie did that, and oh, well, the world is ending. And to us, we think, we'll just have a conversation with Katie and tell her, right? No. And so that's that listening part of us not saying, that is not important, you need to get over it. We can't say that to them. It's asking questions, what's going on, and then maybe giving them some space. Okay, this is a quiet week for you. This is a week where you're with us. They're not going in there with their phones. I mean, there's an electronics issue that probably, right, we all want to have on our radar, that you're not allowing them to isolate with an electronic for hours at a time and not know what's going on. But short of that, what I'm saying is it will ebb and flow. This is the nature of teenagehood. And so just being really responsive and receptive and ready when they emerge.
Yeah, and kind of going off that, the idea that these poor teenagers, all of the emotions, all of the hormones, all the feels, I think oftentimes they may not even be able to identify exactly what's going on. Like, okay, I'm feeling off today. My mom is annoying me, dad, sibling, everything. They may not be able to pinpoint, well, it's because Susie and Kate got mad at me, but it may be this accumulation of all these small stressors that they have to face day to day that just kind of build up, and at some point it explodes or it implodes. And so just being curious, but also being aware that they may not give you an answer. They may not be able to give you an answer yet.
Okay. Does that go back to, you talked about validating emotions and just the power of that. Can you just maybe both of you speak into how do you validate emotions through the different phases of just our kids growing up?
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things I ever learned about validating emotions is validating emotions doesn't mean you're validating behavior. So it's okay to say, hey, I can see you're really upset. You're throwing a tantrum right now. It's also not okay to hit your sister. I can imagine this is really frustrating. So focusing on that is a huge thing, because I've heard a lot of parents say, well, I don't want to tell them what they're doing is okay. It's not okay. Focus on the emotion. You don't have to validate the behavior. But I think it just goes back to each child is different. Each child needs different things, but just as much as you can, trying to tap into an instance when you may have felt a similar emotion and imagining what that would feel like at that age. Okay, my child's really sad. Can I think about a time that I was really sad? What does that feel like in my body? Oh, wow, that must be what they're feeling right now. And that helps you connect on that really deep emotional level.
Yeah, I like your idea. Both can be true at the same time, right? I don't have to agree with you, but I still know that you do feel that. I would say also avoiding the fix is really important. So as parents, we try to do this. As spouses, we try to do this, where I can see exactly how your life would be so much better if you'd follow these 3 rules that I have, right?
What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you? But that is, right, not going to help anybody. And so we've actually had throughout their lives, but several instances recently in our own home where, like, my son was able to say all the things he was feeling. And I know that it's not based in reality. I know that he's spinning. I know all these things. And yet saying to him, honey, that's not true. That's not going to happen. You don't have to worry about that, is not helpful. So instead, I was able to say, it is a lot of pressure. I can totally understand how you feel overwhelmed all the time. There are so many expectations of you, and this is a lot right now. And I actually intentionally, he had written to me, and so I wrote back to him. I was about to say, like, I'm so proud of you, and I checked myself, because I thought, well, proud of you really implies you're achieving something. And so instead I said, I'm so glad you're my son, right? I just wanted to meet him where he was at. Did I still have the 7 ideas of how to make his life better? Sure. I said none of them. It is really, really hard, and I'm so sorry.
That's really helpful. I mean, just so much practical stuff just right there. I did want to get into a few questions for perhaps our viewers who are single, when it comes to attachment, what are some of the things that they could do in their single years to develop secure attachment? And I know, Amy, you talk a lot about, just the season of singleness and how it's a time of blessing, not a time of curse. What are, yeah, although it feels like it sometimes, it can feel like it. What are some important things that singles could develop during that season that you feel are really important?
Yeah, no, it's not a time of curse for sure. And while it is a time of preparation, I'm not preparing myself to be a spouse. I'm preparing myself to be the best version of myself so that when I meet my spouse, we can click together and continue to move forward. And I tell people all the time, become the person you want to date. Right? If you wouldn't want to date you, nobody else does either. And so you have to work on you and your shortcomings. I mean, knowing your attachment style, knowing how you respond in certain situations, just a really big awareness. And now I feel like we're doing therapy plugs, right? Therapy. But you can also just do it during personal reflection with mentors who are ahead of you, with people who will be honest with you. When you say, hey, what do I not see about myself? Someone who's going to say, well, you're kind of X, Y, and Z. And then you can work on those things.
Yeah, I think it's also huge. It's easier to learn about yourself when you're not also having to learn about someone else. So take that time of like, how can I fully understand my quirks, the things that stress me out, how I respond in stress, so that I know how to manage all of that before I then have to take my stuff into a relationship with someone else's stuff and manage all of the stuff. But I know for me personally, like the Enneagram Amy mentioned has been super helpful, just understanding myself better. Therapy has been incredible. Therapy. But yeah, just really seeking, like, I want to know myself for the sake of knowing myself, not so I can be the best for someone else, but so I can be the best for me.
That's helpful. Maybe we can do a couple more questions, but I want to revisit our conversation for couples, especially. One of you mentioned that we should never use our attachment styles as a weapon against the other person, or in the context of an argument or conflict to highlight, oh, that's why you respond that way, because you're an avoidance or you're anxious, when it's so easy and natural to do that. Now, there may be couples that are watching that's been the pattern of communication or conflict for years and years and years. How would you encourage them, or what steps can they take to correct those patterns, number one, and to rebuild trust in that area?
So trust comes when you believe that the other person is going to do what they say they're going to do. They're going to be there and they're going to show up in a way that you would expect. And so if trust has been broken, then the repair needs to be made before you can move forward. And so it's called an attachment injury. And what that means is that our attachment has been severed in some way. And so in order for me to believe that you're ready to move forward, I have to know that my pain affects you. I have to believe that you're impacted by my pain and it matters to you. Until I understand that, or it feels true to me, we're not moving forward. And so anytime you're in a relationship and that attachment injury, whether it's an affair or whether it's you keep doing the same thing over and over, even though I tell you to fill the water in the Keurig, honey. So whatever it is, right? And I just joke about the Keurig, even though that's true. But it's every day showing up, showing you that your pain, it matters to me. I am affected. And then I can believe that we can move forward together.
Yeah, and I think just like trying to seek, again, beyond the behaviors, like what is going on for my partner? Why are they reacting this way? Like, can I connect to that emotion? Like, can I be safe and feel their pain and try to see things from their perspective is huge.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and just practical stuff for our couples and our viewers. And I've learned so much just from your talk and just from this conversation. So thank you so much for your time. We're going to pass it back to our hosts. They have some great information. I think another giveaway too. So stay tuned, be ready to chat because that's coming down the pike. So thank you for joining us. Hope you learned something. If you have any questions for our experts, our hope is to try to answer as many questions as we can. So let us know in the chat section. We'd love to be able to provide some answers for you. Now to our host.
Oh my gosh. I just learned so much stuff.
I know, for real. My head hurts.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a lot.
So was there anything in session 2 that was new to you? I mean, I know you're married to Nikki, so
Yeah.
you probably get a lot of this all the time, but like.
Yeah, but she actually called it out. She doesn't like push my attachment style, right?
Yeah, good.
So as I'm hearing her talk more and more about them, I'm like, okay, where am I? Am I secure? Am I anxious? Am I avoidant? And I know where I'm at. I don't think the world needs to know right now. But yeah, I think I know where I'm at. And so it's really cool to hear more and more about that. So
Yeah.
what about you?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, I think I teared up when Amy said what she told her son. I'm so glad you're my son. I was just like, I have a 4-year-old, right? So validating emotions is something that I try to do a lot of. And, like they said, I don't get it right all the time. And so
Right.
that was encouraging to hear that like it doesn't have to be in every single time I get this right thing. So that was just so meaningful to me. And then, just the part about like being curious and apologizing.
Right.
Like being quick to apologize to your kids.
Right.
That was huge for me.
Or
Yeah.
apologizing to friends and family
Yeah.
just in general, right? It's not easy.
Not easy.
To say, hey, I messed up, right?
Yeah.
I love how they said when you apologize, it gives people the freedom to know, like, I don't have to be perfect,
So good.
right? If you grew up in a house where you felt like you needed to be perfect, I'll raise my hand for that one, right? To be able to hear someone say, hey, I'm sorry, I messed up. It's like, wait, you
Yeah.
can mess up?
Yeah.
Oh, that means I can mess up. So that's huge. Yeah.
Totally.
That was so
Yeah.
great. Well, I think it's time for another giveaway.
Yes, let's do
Right?
it.
Okay, so this giveaway is super cool. This one is you get a year membership to Peacock, the streaming service,
What?
and you get an electric s'mores maker, which is going to be awesome.
Who wouldn't want that?
Yeah, I want them both.
Yes.
Again, and I'm guessing I can't win.
Yeah, probably not.
It's rigged.
No.
It's rigged,
Yeah,
of course.
sorry.
All right, so if you don't know what Peacock is, it's a streaming service, and they have some of the greatest shows ever on there. One of them is The Office. If you don't know what that is, I don't know where you've been. They have Cheers and Frasier on there. They have 30 Rock. They have Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter. They have the Carol Burnett Show. That's a late 60s comedy sketch show, which is awesome. All the great comedians or people that enjoy comedy, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But here's how you can win it. Actually, we found out later, right?
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
tell you what it is the next time, but tell them how they can win it this
Yes.
time.
Okay. Here's how you can win it. You can comment your favorite movie. So
Favorite
you
movie.
like, subscribe, hit the notifications, and comment your favorite movie. Kamar, what's your favorite movie?
Oh my gosh.
I know, top. You
On
got to
the
go right now
spot.
on the spot.
I have insecurities about what my favorite movies are,
Uh-huh.
but so I'm gonna be that person that's like Gone with the Wind is my favorite movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
No shame, no shame. Whatever your favorite movie is, no shame.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. Mine is Beauty and the Beast because is there a better movie ever? There isn't.
It's pretty good.
I've checked. There's
Live
not a better
or
movie.
the cartoon?
Both of them, I cried in both. So,
yeah, well,
exactly.
that's
so,
vulnerability.
Yeah, if you want the 1-year subscription to Peacock and the electronic s'mores maker, comment your favorite movie. Let us know. Let the world know. We'd love to watch a movie with you sometime. So,
Yes.
what's next? What do we have next?
All right, well, we have another 2-minute break coming up for you guys, and then after that, we're gonna be right back with Bonnie Heyman. You guys, she's the 2021 Middle School Counselor of the Year.
Unreal.
So cool. She's a counselor educator, and she's a life coach. So you're not gonna wanna miss this. She's gonna talk to us about parenting in a pandemic.
Ooh.
Nobody expected that, right? So
Right.
I'm excited for it. We'll be back with her in just a few minutes.
All right. We'll see you there.
honor to be here. I'm Bonnie Heyman. I am a life coach at Cultivate Counseling Collective. My primary job is that I'm a school counselor, and I have been working in schools for about the last 30 years. I'm also a parent of 3 young adults right now. So what I'd love to share with you today is a little bit about some ideas that might be helpful in parenting in a pandemic. And anything that I'm going to share today, although it's unique, we are in a unique circumstance, I think that it will apply to parenting in any circumstance. So, you know, we've heard this before, that the pandemic is, we are all in this together. You may have heard that analogy that we are in a storm together, but we are not all in the same boat. And I think that really applies to parenting in a pandemic as well. For some of us, this has been a season that there have been some beautiful things, maybe some increased connection time and family time. We may have found that we're slowing down, that we're more involved in our students' learning, and maybe we're exploring some new skills. But for others of this has been a time of incredible challenge. We are in our homes more than ever with one another, sometimes in tight spaces, and we may be navigating some extreme losses, either economic or academic, or even just personal losses. So we recognize that. We also recognize that even in our same household, our personality and our temperament creates a different experience, and we have different capacities as we're trying to do this. We know that when we're parenting our children, we're aware that each developmental level has different needs. But typically, we are not going through the terrible twos with our toddlers, and we are not going through puberty with our teenagers. This is a unique experience where we are experiencing in real time, sometimes traumatic events, sometimes incredibly stressful events, and certainly unfamiliar territory. So it presents some unique challenges to us as parents. The other thing to keep in mind is just to have that perspective of time in this. When I think about the fact that we are basically in over a year now on this experience of being in quarantine and experiencing a pandemic, think about that. For a 5-year-old, that's 20% of their life. 1 year is 20% of a 5-year-old's life. For a middle-aged person, a 50-year-old, it's maybe 2% of their life. So we understand that as adults, we maybe have experienced other seasons, maybe extended seasons, where we have endured, and we have some history and some memory of surviving a situation. So our little ones have, it's a bigger chunk of their life, and that certainly presents extra challenges for them. What I thought might be helpful, because this is a time that so much is changing and there's so much information coming at us, I thought it might be helpful if we just looked at 5 key things that we can focus on as we help parent our kids through this pandemic. And they all start with C. That's helpful for me to keep it organized. So the first C, the first gift or the first skill that we can encourage our children to develop is that C for connection. And connection is, as I work in the schools, this is what I'm hearing from students, is the number one injury, the number one thing they're struggling with is that sense of isolation. Remember that proximity is not the same thing as connection. And I think a year in, when we've been in our homes with our kids maybe all day, there is that sense that just being near is not the same as being connected. It might be time to step back, and we may have kind of settled into our routines. We may be occupying the same space, but not connected. And so looking for those opportunities for our kids to connect with other children, to connect with family members, and just to find connections in their world. Looking for ways to check in on that is helpful. I find using really simple tools like scaling. How are you feeling on a scale of 1 to 5 today? Or if you have younger children, using visuals and charts that have different emojis, ways that we can communicate how we're doing and increase that connection time. The next C is competence. This one is really important because what we're finding with students in this time is that they are not sure that they are good at the same things that they were good at before. We have students that got their sense of competence by being an athlete, or by being the smartest one in the class, or by being the one that made their classmates laugh. So when we find that we're having a difficult way of measuring our level of competence, we can help with that. One of the things that I'm hearing from parents a lot is that children are very connected or they can't unplug them from their devices or their video games. And asking for how do I get them off of their devices? How do I get them away from those? And so the biggest question I would say is not how do I do it, but back it up to the why. Why are they connected to their device or scrolling through Instagram or on TikTok all day long? What is the need that is meeting for them? Are they getting an adrenaline rush? Are they connecting with their friends? Maybe their gaming system is the only way that they have to connect with friends. Maybe they're really good at whatever they're doing on their device, and so they have a sense of skill, a sense of accomplishment. And so maybe it's an escape or it's soothing for them. So if we can get back up to the why, then we can begin to address how can we replace that with something that will meet the need. If we just say no, get off your device, go relax, but we don't provide a compelling replacement, then we're fighting the wrong battle. So we need to look for ways for our children to feel competent. And the word curiosity has come up a lot today, and I love that because I think in a pandemic is a time where we've had permission to step back and look at what kinds of curiosities are rising up in our children. They may be learning to cook, and they may be gardening for the first time. They may have a curiosity, something that they're searching about and interested on the internet or watching movies of a particular genre. So let's follow the curiosity and then develop competence in those areas that we are already seeing a natural draw towards. The next C is contribution. And this is one I don't think we're hearing enough about. But the idea that we have purpose, that we can contribute, that there is meaning in our life is crucial to one's well-being. I think personally that when somebody feels they are giving back is the greatest antidote to depression. It's the greatest sense of an authentic feeling of self-esteem and self-confidence when we know that we can give something to others. And this can translate even into your home. If you look at replacing the word jobs or household chores with household contributions, we are a team. You have something to offer this family, and it's valued. This can reframe the idea of something just being a chore that is either to get money for or is something that is a compulsory thing. So how can we find a way for our children to feel like they have a measure of contribution? There may be opportunities to do some volunteer work. It might be writing letters. It might be reaching out to someone with a note of encouragement. It might be just doing something within your household, again, as I said. So how can we make our young people feel like they matter and that they have something to offer the world? I oftentimes, when I'm working with students, I will explain to them the difference between a thermometer and a thermostat. A thermometer simply reflects back and measures what's going on around. If I walk into a situation where there's a lot of discouragement and I just reflect back those same feelings, I'm being a thermometer, but I'm not really changing anything. And so a thermostat is another metaphor that says I can change my environment. I can walk into a cold space and with my encouraging words or my example, I can warm it up. I can walk into a place that's charged with tension and I can cool it down. So being a thermostat, being a change agent in whatever environment I'm in can feel very powerful to children and to adults as well. And so we talk about practically what does that look like? How can I be a thermostat on my Zoom call with my classroom? How can I be a thermostat in my home or in my the group that I'm socializing with? How can I be a thermostat online when I'm participating on that group chat? What can my comment do to change the environment? So those are the first 3 C's. So we have competence, we have connection, and we have contribution. The next C is control. We know that this is an area that all of us are feeling the impact of. We do not feel in control. Things are changing every day. There's a randomness and an inconsistency and an unpredictability about what each day holds, and certainly about what tomorrow holds. And so for children, that sense of control is crucial. They need to feel that they have some choices, and that would be a simple way to help a child gain a sense of control, is to feel like they have a choice. It might be something as simple as what we're going to eat for dinner. It might be a choice about a couple of acceptable activities that could be done in the afternoon, but involving them in the process. So a sense of control is crucial right now. Right now, for many of us, and certainly for our children, it feels like we're walking through a minefield, or maybe the image I have is of walking along a suspension bridge that's swinging in the wind, and we're trying to find our bearings. So this is a difficult thing. Here's what I've noticed, and I'm imagining some of you may have experienced this as well. When we were in 2020, everything was about 2020's rough. This is a really hard year, but we are going to get through this together. And I watched families rally, and I watched students saying, we can do this. 2020 is just going to be the year that was rough. And as we rounded the bend in December, and we came into a new semester, a new year, 2021, there was a sense of, this is not fair. I did my part. I rallied for a year, and it feels like the game is rigged. And I saw a sense where students began to say, kind of throw up their hands and say, I'm over it. And parents began to say, I don't know if I can do this. Nobody told me that I was signing on for something this long. So we saw motivation plummet. We saw people feeling like they were just had a new sense of fatigue. They weren't pacing to have to go into 2021. And so that is one of those difficult things that we have to look right now, I think, at providing some motivators for our students and for our children. We know the goal is that when we say, you should do this because it's good for you, you should do this because it's the right thing, you should do this because it will have a great impact on your future. Right now, I feel like we're in a season where some of that goal of that internal, intrinsic motivation is just not fully there. And so as parents, this is a time where we may have to lean into some more external motivators. We may have to provide the point. When your child says, what's the point? Why should I do this math homework? It doesn't matter. They really are having a hard time putting that in context. And in the same way that if you were recovering from an injury, you would make modifications. You wouldn't expect the same thing. If you're not feeling well, we get it. We let our kids who are not feeling well maybe eat their dinner in their bed, or we let them have ice cream if they have the sore throat. In this situation, what I'm hearing from children is they're saying, everything has changed except the expectations of my parents. They still have to do the exact same amount of jobs around the house. They're still expected to get those same grades. They're still expected to have the energy level and the stamina that they had in prior times. So remembering that, we may be doing things a little different. It doesn't mean it's forever. We're in certain circumstances. And I think our kids need some tangible, concrete reasons for what's the point. If we can attach that to something immediate that has meaning for them, we may need to do that for a while and recognize that as things begin to change, we can lean more into expecting them to have that intrinsic and those long-range goals. So we're up to number 5. The last C is teaching our children and equipping them to have coping mechanisms. And here's the thing, you are all doing that. We are teaching our children how to cope. The question is, are we teaching them healthy coping mechanisms? If you have a rough day at work and you come home, or maybe you're working from home and you've been on Zooms all day, and you come into the house and say, I'm exhausted. That was an incredibly draining and frustrating day, and you reach for a glass of wine. You've taught your child a message about how do you cope. What if instead we said, it was exhausting, I'm incredibly overwhelmed, who will take a walk with me? We're teaching how to cope. So we need to be able to teach our children coping mechanisms that are healthy and effective. I love using the example that we need to practice what we preach. We know that. We hear that all the time. It's children's number one criticism of adults is that they are hypocrites. You say this, but you do that. So practice what you preach. But the other side of that is that we need to preach what we practice. And by that, I mean we need to explicitly explain what we are experiencing and what we are doing to match the discomfort. When I go to the store and I feel that I can't breathe because I'm wearing a mask and I'm stressed because I can't find the items that I need, I can explicitly tell my child what I'm feeling. My stomach feels tight. I'm starting to sweat. My heart is racing right now. I'm feeling anxious. So I've explained the body cues, I've named it, and then I may say, I feel like I need to just take a moment and remind myself that this is difficult. Take a breath and then move on. So when we are experiencing things, we describe it explicitly, we name it, and then we talk about what am I going to do to respond to that discomfort or that need that I have right now. I'm finding that young people right now are doing their own research. They are coming in and saying, I think I have an anxiety disorder. I think I'm depressed, because they are researching. They don't know what's going on in their body and it scares them. One of the things that I think we can do for our children is teach them to not be afraid of some of those feelings. This is a time that it would be appropriate to feel anxious. It's appropriate to feel bouts of some depressive moments. It's appropriate to feel some fear. So we want to explain to our children that these aren't feelings that we need to deny or be afraid of, but that we can work with them and give it context. So anticipating and rehearsing what they're likely to experience is helpful. I talked about kind of name it so that you can tame it. That's a helpful way to just give our children vocabulary for what they're experiencing. I love to not only give children an enhanced vocabulary so that they understand, what does betrayal feel like in my body? And how is betrayal different than being annoyed? If we can expand their vocabulary, they can feel empowered to be able to explain what they're feeling, to be able to say, I didn't know there was a word for that. That feels different than mad. Guilty feels different than irritated. So as we enhance and give our children more choices of vocabulary words, that will help the communication. And then also, I always love when we're able to, in our family, name a moment that kind of symbolizes what we're feeling. Years ago, my husband and I traveled to Russia to a town called Rostov. And we have so many emotions that are attached to what it feels like to be, it became a verb in our house when we get Rostoved. We know what that means, and no one else needs to, but that's our shortcut when we say this represents all those things that we've already talked about, and I can say it with a word, I can say it with a nonverbal cue, but it helps us to communicate. Focusing on your senses is another way that you can help children learn to cope. There are all kinds of tools to do that, but honestly, I think just focusing on listening, seeing, smelling, feeling is helpful. Tasting. If we can use our senses to help us ground us in the present, so that then we can move into the future with a little bit more stability. I love acronyms. And so along with the 5 C's, I want to leave you with some hope. And so that's actually going to be the acronym that I'll share with you today, is hope. There's so many things that are being asked of us. There's so many ways that our children are looking to us for security. So if I could say, if you could do these 4 things and teach your children to do these 4 things every day, I think it will help us. And so the acronym is HOPE. The H stands for health. And that is taking stock each day to say, are we doing things that are helping us to feel healthy? Are we walking? Are we getting fresh air? Are we drinking enough water? Are we doing the things that we need to do? Are we getting enough sleep to be healthy? The O stands for others. And this goes back to that idea of contribution. Each day saying, have we stepped outside ourselves and said, what can we do for someone else? It gives you, again, that sense of control, that sense of competence. How can I send an encouraging text to someone? Teaching your children to say, have you done something for someone other than yourself today? Can we do something for a sibling? Can we do something and can we thank a teacher for what they're doing? So H for health, O is others, P is perspective. And again, this goes back to understanding that we need to provide for our children. Although we're in the storm with them, what we bring is the gift of experience. So we give them the perspective to say, this will pass. We've been through some things like this before. We give perspective when we say, you know, it's hard, but we're warm and we have food. We give perspective when we say, let's be grateful. Let's look at the things in this that we can focus on. And then the E is expectant. That's that idea that we identify something that we have to look forward to. And I love to say, let's make this something that's a given. There are too many broken promises. So when we say, what can we be expectant about? It might be as simple as, we're baking cookies tonight. Tomorrow we are going to make some popcorn and watch a movie together. COVID or not, quarantine or not, that's happening. So our children really need to have that sense of, I can count on this. Just to wrap it up, the last thing that I would want to share with you is really, let's write this story well. We can say 2020, 2021, my senior year of high school, my 8th grade year, my kindergarten year was a ripoff. It was a disaster. It just was nothing but loss. It wasn't fair. We can do that, or we can help our children to write the story to say, let's look at where God was at work. Let's look at the strengths that we developed, the miracles that happened, the moments of blessing that were woven throughout that story. In the book of Esther, it says, I was born for such a time as this. And I really believe that if we could teach our children that it isn't that this happened to you, this happened for you. You are in this. It could have been any generation, but it was you. Why? What can you use that for? And how can you redeem this and write this story as a time that I participated in a moment in history? And I found hope, and I was able to be somebody who made a difference. I hope those are helpful to you. So again, just those C's: connection, competence, contribution, control, and coping skills. Hang in there. Parents, you are superheroes, and we're in this together.
Wow, thank you so much, Bonnie. And as she's heading over to the panel where she's going to be joined with some other great speakers, they're going to talk about parenting in the pandemic. I think it's time to share who won this giveaway.
Let's do it.
Right? Okay, so drum roll. John Rego. John Rego, you won, which is awesome. You won the year subscription to Peacock and the electronic s'mores maker. So in my mind, I'm thinking, all right, sit down. I'm going to watch Apollo 13.
Ooh, good
right?
one, yeah.
Or The Breakfast Club, right? I'm going to sit down and watch Apollo 13 at The Breakfast Club with the family, and I'm going to have some s'mores.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, it's going to be
doesn't
so
love
great.
s'mores?
Yeah, who doesn't love s'mores,
It's
right?
going to be great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So watch whatever movie you want, bring the
Yes.
family, get everyone involved, have some s'mores inside. I've never had a s'more inside.
You know, I haven't either, but I think it's worth a try.
Yeah, exactly. John, send us some pictures or invite us. I'll give you my cell phone number.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly. John, hope you have a great time.
Awesome. Yeah, enjoy those s'mores, John. And, you know, for the rest of us that didn't win the s'mores maker and a full year of Peacock Premium, we still have a free resource that we want to give to you guys. So Easter's right around the corner.
Yes, it is.
And our New Break Kids team has put together Easter celebration kits for everyone, the whole family to have at home, and they want to give you guys one for free. So you can head on over anytime to easter@newbreak.com, and you'll just find the Easter Kids Jam 2021 right on that page. Click on it, sign up for your kit, and it'll come right to you. It's going to be so cool. And, you know, while you're there, we want to invite you to take a look at Good Friday service times, Easter service times for any of our campuses, because those services are going to be full of moments for us to experience something fresh in our relationship with God. And that is going to be so cool. So please join us. All of the information for that is easter@newbreak.com.
Yeah, that's going to be so great. I'm so excited for the Easter weekend. It's going to be fun. Good Friday and Easter Sunday. It's going to be great. Well, now I think it's time for us to hear a little bit from our panelists, all about parenting in the pandemic. We have Thea, who's going to be joining them. We have Pastor Jared and his wife, Julie Johnson. Pastor Jared has been working with teens for the 6 out of 11 years. He's been a pastor, right, with middle school and high school students. And then Julie is a teacher, right? And so she sees them every single day. And they also have kids, which is so cool.
Yes.
And then, of course, we get to hear more from Bonnie. And then we have Carrie Botkin, who's kind of hosting that panel. And Carrie Botkin is our kids pastor at the Scripps Ranch campus of New Break. So I'm so excited to hear from them. I'm going to be taking notes. Be sure to do the same. Let's go ahead and give a listen to what this panel can teach us today.
Welcome back, everybody, and to our panel on parenting in a pandemic. We're so glad that you're joining us for this discussion. And we have a great panel ready for you. We have Jared and Julie Johnson. Jared is our campus pastor at the Scripps Ranch campus, and his much better half, Julie, who is a teacher. Fourth grade, right?
Fourth grade.
Fourth grade teacher here in San Diego. And then we have Thea. Thea is our preschool director at our New Break preschool, which we like to call a play school because kids need to play. And then we have Bonnie Heyman, who just did our keynote on parenting in a pandemic. And so let's get into some questions here. We have some good questions for you guys. And the first one is this, and I kind of had to deal with this recently. Many parents around the country, they're just trying to hang in there. They're struggling with isolation and loneliness and uncertainty and sadness and guilt. And some days it just feels like there is no relief in sight. We also feel like we're in constant crisis mode, scrambling to find fixes to things that are just going on in our world that go wrong. Like, for example, my son had a coronavirus case in his class, and his entire cohort got shut down. And so when that happened, just my frustration level was just up to here because I had to rearrange my whole life to have him back at home. And so I know that a lot of parents out there are struggling with some different feelings. And so what are some best practices that we can use to cope with our own social and emotional hardships during the pandemic? Let's start with Jared and Julie. Have you guys felt any of these feelings, and what did you do about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first and foremost is that we give ourselves grace, that life is not normal right now, and it's okay if it's different, and it's okay, like Bonnie talked about, like, that we are feeling these emotions. Like, it's normal to feel some anxiety and to feel those things. And so to have grace on yourselves, to have grace on your spouse, and to have grace on your kids, I think is really important. And yeah.
Yeah. And even like last year, beginning this whole pandemic, I dealt with a lot of anxiety and like, I didn't know what was going on inside of me. And so she was really good about, she said, Jared, you just need to go for a walk, right? Get out of the house, stop looking at all your computer stuff, and go for a walk. And the thing with exercise is it releases those endorphins that helps lower that stress. And so I think that's one thing that is super healthy for us is we have to move our body and exercise. Get out of the house, go on a hike, go ride your bike, whatever it looks like, and take the family if you need to. But I think that was something that was super good for me that I didn't want to do. And she said, Jared, no, you need to do it for you. I was like, thank you. So that was one thing that was super helpful. Because as parents too, we say this at New Break all the time, but you can't give away what you don't have, but you do give away what you do have. And so if you're living in stress and anxiety, your kids are going to see it, and they're like sponges. So they're going to soak that all in. They'll see how you're responding to all of this stuff. And so like health for you is important because you'll pass it on to your kids for sure.
Yeah, and connecting with people at your own comfort level is really, really important. I think we have all learned that we are not made to be isolated, and we're made to be in community. So if your comfort level is finding a group on Zoom, if your comfort level is being with your neighbor or your family member, if whatever that looks like for you, I think having actual connection with other people is vital, and we have learned that after a year.
So good. Thea, how can you speak to this as seeing parents go through your play school? Like you've seen their emotions, you've seen what they're dealing with. How have you been able to kind of coach them through kind of some of these things?
Well, this is definitely near and dear to us because at the play school, we've had the situations where we've had a case. And so the next thing you know, you're closing a whole classroom. And what are we doing to the parents? What are we doing to the kids? What are we doing to the staff when that has to happen? Well, ultimately, it's about reframing, I think, what excellence is. Because if you're like me, I'm a perfectionist and I have a standard, and I have the standard for what excellence is. And it's not that we don't still strive for excellence, but we have to reframe in this time what excellence means. We're not going to commit to a standard of excellence at the same level as we would have before, because the pandemic in itself has redefined what excellence is. So like you were saying, offer grace to yourself and to the school and to just where we're at. We have to change. Don't think that you're doing something wrong. And always, it's an old cliche, but in this time, you've got to hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. So like for parents, there are going to be times when the cohorts are going to have to close and the classes are going to have to close. And it's just unfortunate. And they're going to do it in a drop of a hat. So be prepared for that. Have a backup plan for yourself. Don't think that you have to have all the answers and that you have to now be ready to pivot in a moment's notice and have them all taken care of for that 14 days. Have an action plan, have some help, have people in your own cohort that can help you during that time, and be willing to call on them and just say, this is more than I can handle right now and I need somebody to help.
That was really good, practical. Thank you. Bonnie, I love that you said when you were talking about emotions to name them so you can tame them. Can you expound on that a little bit as far as like what that means as an adult? Like how can we put that into practice a little bit practically?
I think, first of all, it's just that sense of more than ever, really, we need to be self-aware. And so we, as parents, we are pros at denying that we have needs, at saying it can wait. I'm fine. We hold it together for our kids and we're brave. We don't show them the irritation. We don't show them the feelings that we think might scare them. We don't want them to see that we're scared. So I think this is a new season where we need to be authentic. And as Jared was saying, they know. They may not have the exact words, but they know Mom's smiling right now, but I know she's mad or I know she's scared. So being able to use, and that's what I meant about being explicit. Preach what you practice. Say, I think I'm feeling scared. I can tell, name all the body cues. The reason I think it is because make those connections. So I feel like I might need to, and you can even say, what I feel like doing is eating a quart of ice cream. But I'm not sure that would be the most healthy thing right now. And so what I'm going to do, let me think of my options. So model it all explicitly. I think that's helpful. I love the idea that you mentioned about connecting with other parents. I Zoom with a group of parents every Friday, and they just say, oh, you too? Your child's saying that also? You also feel like a failure? You also let them stay up way too late? Those kinds of things. Being able to normalize what's not normal, but it's very common.
You guys are good. Really good. All right, let's move on to the next question. So a lot of schools, San Diego School District in particular, have been shut down for an entire year. What are some good tips that you have for keeping our kids engaged in distance learning versus just completing their assigned tasks? And what would you say to parents that are worried about their kids, that they think they're behind when schools start back up? Julie, could you start with this as from a teacher perspective?
Yeah, I think the question of, my child is behind and they're not learning anything, and what are we going to do when they go to fourth grade? They're not going to know this and this and this. Everybody's in the same boat. So as an educator, as a teacher, and all the teachers that I've talked to, we get it. We understand whether kids have been home, even if kids have been on campus. It's not a normal year. And so in my head, I foresee the next several years, kids are catching up. And so to be able to let that anxiety go of, my kid can't read yet and he's supposed to be able to read, he'll get there. They'll catch up, they'll get there. And I think it's an understanding by most, if hopefully everybody, that that this is a unique year, and academically we'll get there. It'll look different and it'll take more time. I was watching an interview of somebody who's kind of joking, and she was pretending to be in a job interview, and they said, okay, when you were 2 years old, could you count, to 10? And she's like, well, why is that? Why would I need to do that? If kids aren't at the quote unquote milestones that we think they should be, it's okay. They'll get there. And so don't freak out if your kiddo can't do something that you think they should. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense.
I could just add to that. I'm at a 4th through 8th grade school, and so I had a parent recently say, my 8th grader needs to repeat 8th grade. He says he hasn't learned anything this year, and he doesn't feel ready for high school. And so I had to talk to her about the fact that, just like Julie was saying, it's not just one grade level. It's not just one area of the country that has been impacted academically. So there's been adjustments all around. The high school knows that our 8th graders coming in, and the 3rd grade teacher knows that that 2nd grader has had a different experience. But the other thing I would say to parents is, we are used to looking at a set of standards and a set of subject areas that are reading levels and math levels. Can you imagine if our report card said flexibility, ability to adapt, ability to work with different forms of technology in kindergarten? We just need a new template. We need a whole new system to look at what do we mean by behind.
If I could jump in, because I couldn't agree with you more, I think that we need a new template. We need a new framework. And if this pandemic has taught us anything, it should have taught us that the way that our children learn is different than what we thought it was, and it definitely should be different. I mean, there's a reason that the preschool is called a play school, and it's not just because it's a cute little name and it distinguishes us. It's because children learn best through play. And when parents come to us for tours, the very first thing I say is that our main concern is not their academics, teaching them ABCs, 1, 2, 3s are their names, because they will get all of that organically and naturally through the play that they do, through their own discovery, through their own curiosity. And our job at the play school is to build a really solid foundation so that they love learning and so they love coming to school, so that will be the contributor to their future academics and how well they do. If starting at the very bottom, if they hate coming to school, if they're unhappy, if they're not getting their needs met, if they don't feel comfortable, if they're scared, if they don't feel validated by their teacher, if they don't learn how to solve problems and take risks at that very young age, none of that learning is going to matter later. And we have to reframe, though, what's important, because that emotional social should be the first and foremost, no matter what grade your child is in. And also what Jared was saying, when you're looking at these things and where they're at, make sure that they're getting up and they're moving, because just like for us as adults, the more that you sit, the more your brain turns off. That's just how it is. The longer that you sit, the more tired you are. And you, at the end of the day, you think, oh, why am I so tired? I didn't do anything. Well, a body in motion is going to stay in motion, and one that's not in motion is going to be slothful. So make sure that the kids are having an opportunity between, very often to jump up, run around, take a walk, whatever they need to do jumping jacks, do push-ups, whatever, gets them moving. That will stimulate their brain for what they need.
So good. A little bit of a shift in your mind about what standards should be. I mean, I just felt like the weight come off a little bit as you guys said that. So that was so good. All right, next question. Are you guys feeling anything positive or hopeful coming out for the pandemic for families?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of positive. I think for us, for sure, like you're home with your kids. And so you could take it two ways. Either you don't like it, you're just tired of your family, or it's an opportunity for you to be like, let's invest into my kids right now. We did a lot of board games and we're doing puzzles right now, which we have a 1,000-piece puzzle and it's impossible, but whatever. But there's something about doing it together. Like we had to force ourselves to do things that we didn't normally do because we're home. We get to eat all of our meals together, which wasn't always the case, right? So you get to sit down and have conversations. And so I think that's one thing that I see coming out of this is even our conversations at the table are different, right? It's even bringing in some school stuff. There's, our son is in kindergarten, so just asking math questions in a fun way is a cool way to include learning into fun conversations at the table. And so I see that coming from this, at least for our standpoint, is we've had to invest in each other, which has been so good in so many ways for us.
Yeah, I'm just to add in, thinking specifically in terms of schooling, what I'm finding is, first of all, parents are more involved than ever in actually not only the content of what their children are learning, but how their children learn. They're saying, oh my gosh, you have trouble paying attention. Or, oh wow, I didn't know that I needed to present the information to you this way. There's also, I think, an incredible appreciation for teachers, which I love. But also, I'm seeing students that are understanding their learning styles for the first time. Introverted children that are saying, finally I feel relaxed. I like to learn this way. Children that are just aware of what works for them. And I love that our families are connecting on that.
Top 3 favorite board games that you've been playing. Go.
My favorite or the ones we've been playing?
Because those are different.
Yeah, they are different. Sorry. Classic. Life has been one of them. And then our daughter has this one game, Dress Up Dogs or something like that. It's a matching game.
It's a matching game.
That's all we played for the last 6 weeks, I feel like. I'm really good at knowing what dogs are and how they dress up.
You haven't played Pretty Pretty Princess?
I mean,
I'd
I've
like to
dressed
see.
up. I don't know if that counts as anything. But.
I'm always looking for good game ideas.
Yeah, so there you go.
You had some classics in there.
Yeah, no, it's been fun.
Thea, have you seen anything positive or hopeful come out of this pandemic with families?
Oh gosh, so many things. I mean, first and foremost, like everyone's been saying, they're spending more time together and they're getting to know each other on a really intimate level. I mean, we're learning not just, we talk a lot about love languages and how you speak to each other in their love language. Well, now we're learning about how what their learning language is and the way that they learn, and we're understanding how to meet that need. And I mean, I just think that's amazing. Also, I think all of the outdoor activities, I mean, here in San Diego, we don't take advantage of that enough. I mean, all the families that are talking about going camping and they went on hikes and they started to do all these fantastic things that are so available to us here, especially in San Diego. And they're really taking advantage of that now. And I think that's fantastic. So, yeah.
Cool.
I was going to just add one other thing, thinking what could be a negative is a positive is we talked about the connection. For me, connecting with other teachers and kind of commiserating together, not complaining, but like seeing that other people are in the same boat that we are has been really helpful. And I feel like I've connected more with other educators and other parents because we're experiencing the same thing in such a crazy year. So.
Yes. If I could add to that, I think, though, too, that parents, like educators are connecting, but parents also are learning to not be so competitive of each other. They are realizing we're all in the same boat and we need each other, and it kind of takes the village, and they're learning to rely on each other in ways they didn't before because they're letting go of some of those stereotypes of being the perfect mom or the perfect dad, and they're letting go of that and realizing, we all need each other, and that's outstanding because no one can do this alone.
I think we're also rethinking certain things. I'm thinking just in terms of accessibility. So parent meetings that parents are able to attend things that they couldn't attend before. They're able to gather easier. And so there are things that I think definitely won't ever go back to the way they were. We've discovered some beautiful tools.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right, last question. And Bonnie, you kind of gave us a great acronym of HOPE, health, others, perspective, and being expectant. And that's one thing that we can do to help our kids every day. You gave some really good points there in your keynote message. But have you guys come up with any habits that you've instilled in your kids? And I'll start with you, Jared and Julie. During the pandemic, what's something that's been really helpful for your kids? Something that you've given them a tool to do?
I was going to say just being consistent. And I think having our expectations known to them and communicating that to them. And something, I think it was just yesterday when they, but also like celebrating in the home, I think is really important. When they finished school, Zoom school yesterday, they had a dance party. And so just having things like that, I think are making it fun. What I'm trying to say, being consistent with the important things and then bringing in excitement and fun when you can. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, we did have a dance party and it was legit. But
I saw the video.
Yeah,
it was legit.
I didn't dance, but whatever.
Next
I
time.
did dance. One thing, I think it's so valuable and something that I've just learned through this is praying with your kids, and especially from there's a lot of things, I think, Bonnie, you're saying, there's a lot of things we can do to cope with stuff. There's healthy things, there's unhealthy. I think our kids seeing us pray and praying with them out loud of, I'm scared, but let's pray about it. Like, let's go to God first has been helpful for me, but then I get to model it for my kids and to see how they pray different. We pray before bed, and just to hear how they pray is really fun to see that. And so I think that's something as Christ followers, that's we get to do that every single day. Is they're going to follow our lead. Either I'm going to respond I cope by going on my phone. Wait, you know what? Let's sit down. Can we pray about this? Even in the little things, a little scratch on the hand. can we pray about that? And so I think that's something that is valuable. Don't be afraid to pray with your kids out loud, even if you don't know the words to say. They like to see you fumble through it. They're learning too, So I think that's something that I've valued through this.
Just some simple techniques. We've all talked all day about the importance of gratitude. So just those simple routines that we can turn into almost rituals. And the difference is that when you make something a ritual versus just a routine, it means you've attached meaning to it. And it usually involves a connected piece with another person. So if it's that gratitude jar where the family is collecting those moments, I also think it's important to have sort of a challenge jar. Either here's a current problem, we don't know what the answer is to it yet, but let's put it in the jar, or a jar of things that we've overcome, that we can say there are things that we have gotten through. I think in this time, so many of us have said every day feels the same. It's just like Groundhog's Day. It's just like every day. And for kids, those visuals that can help them mark, whether it's calendars or jars or paper chains, but something that says we are making progress. We're not just spinning in a snow globe that's shooken up, but that there's meaning, and there we can find order even in the chaos.
It's really good. Thea, did you have anything that you wanted to add on this one? What are some kind of, what's something that we can do to help our kids every day? A new habit to form, or something to just encourage them?
Well, I think, again, like everyone's been saying, it starts with us. You can't give what you don't have. So fill yourself up first. Make sure that you're able to get up a little bit earlier than they are, just even if it's 10 minutes, and submerge yourself in the things that are going to fill you up, that are going to rejuvenate you. Get into God's word. Read a psalm a day if that's all you can handle. Take 2 minutes to say a little prayer. Do some exercises. Have that cup of tea out on the patio. Make sure that before you're even coming to your child, you're filled up so that you have something to give them. And then create visuals like the calendars and the jars. Get giant poster boards and make one a gratitude poster board and one an expectation poster board or a hope poster board. And then let them draw their own pictures. Let them get creative. Let them take pictures. Print them out on your thing. Technology can be a blessing in this case. And put those posters there on the refrigerator, on the wall. Make them visual so that every day they're walking by and they see what they can be grateful for. They see what can happen. And then also an expectation board. What do we want to do when we're able? What are we looking forward to? Put those visuals, because children, no matter what their learning style, they are visual. They need to see things. They don't, as parents know, they don't hear what you say. They see what you say and what you do. And also, just one last thing, being cautious as a parent of the messages you're sending without words. Because if you're telling your children that everything's okay, or if you're following through with there's no real risk to only certain groups, mommy's fine, daddy's fine, you're fine, but then you're covering yourself up in a bubble suit and the whole entire mask, which, don't get me wrong, use the equipment, and definitely protect yourself. But if you're telling them that you're fine and there's no risk, but you're covering yourself up with a mask and a shield and gloves, and you're walking out, they're getting a very different message. So be careful of the messages that you're sending that are nonverbal.
If I could add one last thing, I think one of the best things we can give, like the best present you can give your kids is your presence. Like when you color with kids, like don't just say, hey, color, like color with your kids, right? Be in there with them. If they're going to go play in the mud, go play in the mud, right? Be there with them. I think that says a lot of what you're doing. And so give your kids your presence. I think that's massive.
Jared, will you share about that phone thing that you were telling us on a Sunday? What did you do with your phone? What did you decide to do? Because I think that's super important too.
Yeah. For me, I can always go on my phone and, whatever, do Facebook, Instagram, whatever you want to do. For me, I realized that this was taking me out of being present with my kids. And so when I go home, I'll put my phone, we have a water cooler by it, I'll put my phone there because I don't want to be in it. Because if I'm on my phone and saying, hey, kids, I don't want you on your electronics, it's like, but hold on, let me go sit on the couch and sit on my phone. It's like, you're a hypocrite for doing that, right? And so I want to put it down and, just be with my kids. How was your day? Tell me how your day was, whether it was good or bad, and just ask those questions. Get in their stuff, right? Not in a bad way. Don't be overbearing, but listen and use that as a moment to speak life into your kids, Yeah.
So good.
And I would just say also having kids know that they can anticipate you will be checking in every day. So if you have that ritual, whether it's highs and lows around the dinner table, but they know I'll be asked every day. I'll have the opportunity to say, today I was scared, today I was bored, today I was mad, and that they know you'll share it as well. And you'll, again, more opportunities to model.
And find ways to be silly and creative, have dance parties, turn off all the lights and have a glow-in-the-dark hide-and-seek with flashlights. I mean, find opportunities to get active and just be really silly and goofy with your kids. I mean, this is such an opportunity to let them know that, you're not just mom or dad. You're their friend, and you're with them, and you're in it.
My kids love jokes, so we have been having little joke competitions lately. I'm
That's
not
good.
great at it, but
I was going to say, what's a joke that you have? But we will.
You have a joke on your
time's
Christmas
up.
card.
Time's up. Look, we're minus time right now. All right, you guys, thank you so much for all of your wisdom and your insight. It's been so helpful, and we'll throw it back to you guys.
Wow, thank you so much to Thea and Jared and Julie. Who else do we have? We had Bonnie in there,
yeah.
Carrie. Oh my goodness, just a wealth of wisdom. I don't think any parents were like, yeah, I'm going to have a kid during a pandemic.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what they signed up for.
Oh, I totally was expecting
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
You probably were. You
No,
probably
I
were.
wasn't. It's not at all.
Right, but what's so great is they were just able to hear some great resources and tools, and even how they can carry themselves and model, being a great parent for
Yeah.
kids that are looking for that right now. So
Yeah.
so powerful, so great to hear.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love those choice pieces that they talked about, right? Like Bonnie talked about the thermostat versus the thermometer and how
Yeah.
you actually have the ability to change the temperature of a room. I was like, that's so empowering for me as a mom when I walk in and the room is just like a meltdown city, right?
Right.
And I love that piece that Jared talked about too. Like you can look at the pandemic one of two ways, right? Like you can either be tired of spending time with your family or you can see it as an opportunity to invest. And I love that we have a choice in how we approach, what was totally unexpected for us. Yeah.
And what's so good, maybe you're like me and you don't have kids, just to know that you can learn from people that are ahead of you. We like to say at New Break, you have people behind you that maybe you're leading, people beside you that are your peers, and people ahead of you. I was able to gain so much wisdom just from hearing them. And something that stuck out to me was so simple, was pray with your kids. I know that seems so normal, maybe so easy to do, but I have my nephews, and my nephews are like my own. And man, when we're able to pray with them or draw with them and have, play with crayons with them. They were reading me a comic book the other day, and I was
That's
like,
awesome.
I need to not do anything else but listen to them. I mean, it's so cool to have those moments together. So powerful.
Absolutely, yeah. So this last panel is really, really unique, and I am so excited for it. I think it's going to be really eye-opening for a lot of us. We are going to welcome in our student panel. So this is a panel made up of all students, and they are going to be hosted by our students pastor at our Scripps Ranch campus, Ashley Henson. It's going to be really, really good, you guys. So we'll be back in 2 minutes with that student panel for you.
It's going to be great. Let's check it out.
All right. Well, welcome back to our final panel of the day. And I mean, I think I'm biased because I'm the student pastor, but this is the one that I think is the best one. Right? They're so nervous. They're like, sure. Yeah. So let me introduce them. First of all, I guess I should introduce myself. My name is Ashley, and I am the student pastor here at our Scripps campus. And then right here, we've got Miss Maya Dawson. Maya is a junior, and I'm not going to tell them what school because they might stalk you, right? No. Next, we have Levi, and Levi is also a junior. And then on the very end here, we have Lexi, and Lexi is a sophomore in high school. And so today we're just going to talk. The panel is called What You Wish Your Parents Knew. And when we were talking about that, you all were kind of like, my parents are great, which is so nice of them. So here's what I want to preface. I want to preface that obviously we're not professionals. Well, you guys are professional teenagers.
True.
Yeah, full-time teens. But we're not like therapists. We're not professionals, but we're going to answer as honestly as we can, right? And none of these, it doesn't mean that they pertain to them and their parents, but you guys can give at least a teen perspective. So let's get into it. All right, so we've actually got a decent amount of questions, and some of these are kind of hard, but I'm excited to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions. So I'm going to read the first one to you, and then I might just direct it to one of you specifically. Be prepared. It's like school, right? Like your hands are like all sweaty. Okay, so our first question is, for parents of older kids, aka teenagers, who are missing out on big milestones like graduation, prom, and sports, what are some things that parents can do to help them work their way through this? So if you guys were in this scenario, right? Like say you're missing prom. Levi, what are your thoughts? What are some things that they can do to kind of help them celebrate and work through it?
I think communication is really important with like anybody. So I think honestly you could ask your kid and be like, "Hey, I'm really sorry that you have to miss this like important event in your life. So like what can I do to just like help you feel like appreciated and celebrated?" So then maybe that means like going to their favorite spot for dinner or like watching a movie with them. But I think that instead of just guessing like, "Oh, I bet that they'll like this. I bet they'll like this," is just asking them and just being like, "What can I do to make you feel loved?" I would say.
No, that's good. That way you don't assume they want to go to Chuck E. Cheese. Have you guys even been there? No. Anyone else? Does anyone else have any ideas? Maya, you got any ideas?
I think for me, it's words of affirmation. So like even just simply telling your kid like, hey, you did really good. Like I know you're missing this and like I know this is really hard for you, but like we appreciate you and you're doing a really great job. And that's like, my mom does a really good job of that. I just want to say that.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that's so great too, right? And I'm sure it depends on your love language. I know we've talked about a little bit of that, but yeah, just encouraging, right? So there was a second part to this question, and they had asked, it also feels like a lot of older students are giving up on their school year. How can we encourage them to push through? I know that's hard, but do you guys feel like that? Do you feel like you're, maybe giving up isn't the right word, but where you're like tired and exhausted and like, man, I'm over this?
I feel like giving up is the right word.
Right. You're like, nope, that's right. I'm giving up.
I mean, I'm in-person school, so like I don't really have a choice to give up because I have to go into school at 7 o'clock.
That's
every
true.
day.
Yeah, so Lexi, how are you feeling? I know you are Zoom classes right now.
I think like a big part is just talking to your child and being like, where are you? Because I know in my house and personally like anxiety and like depression is like a really big thing lately. And talking to your child and seeing how they're feeling and not pushing them to a point where they can't be there anymore, but like encouraging them and maybe like Maya said earlier, like giving them words of affirmation, knowing that they are doing a good job in school is a good thing.
Yeah, no, that is good. And would you say, because I know for me at least, not that I'm a teenager, but I think I would need my parents to come in and be like, okay, clearly this isn't working for you, so what can we change? Would you say that's helpful at all, or?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that could work by like just asking for their opinion and saying if you would like to create your own little space in the house and like find your own little groove, then we'll support you through that. And like I know we're deciding whether or not we want to go back to school right now, and my parents sat me down for a talk, And I really don't know if I want to go back yet, but I know I'll miss a lot of things if I don't go back. But if I do go back, I feel like the possibility of my anxiety like spiking up will definitely be there.
Yeah. So you're saying communication.
Yes, communication.
Yes, which we actually talked a little bit even before this, and that's something that we were talking about in all parts of a relationship with parents, right? Is like, just communicate with us, talk to us. Like, you guys are adults, right? Well, you're getting into almost. All right, well, let's get into this next question. It says, if my teen isn't locked in their room, then they're out and on their phone. So with that, there's two parts. It says, does that mean that they don't want to talk to me? And then the second part is, how can I engage them? So I'll repeat it just for you. If they're not stuck in their room, then they're on their phone zoned out. So A, does that mean you don't want to talk to them? And then B, how can they engage them? Maya, you got any thoughts?
I mean, I don't think it necessarily means that they don't want to talk to you, but I think it's just a matter of like what you guys are going to talk about, because I know when talking to a parent, it's really hard to talk about your day without your parent like interjecting and saying something or like starting to lecture you with different things. And that is just like really hard in itself. And I think a way to engage that and to like fix that a little bit would be for the parent to just talk about their day first and to like be that open, like have that openness that you want your kid to have with you. It's like a two-part.
Yeah, it's like, because otherwise it kind of feels like an interrogation sometimes, because you're like, what'd you do today? How was your day? And like, no, that's really good, because I'm like, oh, I'm honored you're like taking an interest into my life and everything. But I do think it's important, like, that it's a two-way street to just talk about your day as well. But, and yeah, for me at least, when I'm on my phone, it's not like, oh, I don't want to talk to you. It's more just like, I'm kind of bored and I want to do something, you know? But that's just for me at least.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Lexi, you got anything to add, or you like agree?
No, I agree with both of them.
Perfect. All right, this third one, I actually love this question, and we kind of talked about it. And Maya, you even hit on it a little bit just now, but it says, as a parent, I always feel like I have to be strong, or act like everything is okay. Is that true?
No.
Not at all.
But I could see how parents feel like that, right? Like they don't want
Yeah.
to overwhelm you, and they don't want you to feel like everything's like falling apart. And so they feel like they have to like keep it all in. But you're saying they don't need that. Yeah?
I think part of that is if you think your parent is fine all the time, then you have to feel like you're okay all the time as well. And like then you're not able to show any emotion, and you're not able to feel like you're at a super low point in your life because your parent's not. And because you're like, oh, they don't seem to be affected by this as much as I am, so why would I feel anything as well?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
Write that down.
It's kind of like I feel like the church. Like if you go to like a church and then everyone just acts like they're perfect all the time, then you're gonna feel like out of place and be like, oh well, I struggle with a bunch of stuff, so I guess I'm in the wrong place because all these people are perfect. And I think it's kind of the same thing with a parent-teen relationship. If all your parent is like, oh yeah, I'm fine, my life is wonderful, I hope yours is, you know? Like I think just relatability and just openness and honesty, because not all of us are great, not all of us have a perfect life, none of us do, so yeah.
Yeah. Do you agree with that, Lexi?
Yes, I do.
I know by the time it gets to you, you're like,
like
they said all my things. But you're right. So ironically, just last week in our student group, Josh, my husband, spoke with us, and we talked about that, right? Like whether it's at home with you as a parent or at church or even at school, like with teachers, if we pretend like everything's fine and we don't talk about our struggles, then no one else knows that you're struggling. And so the more open we can be in all things, right? Like even we talked about it in youth, like if you expect your child to be open and talk to you about any questions they have with sex even, like then you need to be vulnerable and make it where it's something that they can come to. So I like that. But with that said, I know something that I've seen parents that are on the opposite spectrum of acting like everything's okay, and they tell their child everything. And I see it a lot with single parents, right? Because like once you guys are older, they become your friends. So I guess, I don't know if it's a question or if you want to elaborate on it, like there's definitely a happy medium, right? Because if if you know that your parents are burdened and they're constantly giving you their burdens, then you take them on, right? Yeah. So I know we've even talked about that a little bit, Maya, just seeing other people. So do you have any advice or any thoughts on like what is a good happy medium? Like you want your parents to be vulnerable, but you don't need to know all the struggles. Or Lexi, do you got?
I think by just like, I think showing that you can be vulnerable in certain moments and not just tucking away your feelings. Because personally, I can tell when something's off with my parents. And if they're just hiding it from me, then I'm going to be like, oh, if they're going to hide it from me, then I don't have to tell them this. And if you could just show them, you don't have to tell them the whole story, but say like, oh, I had a bad day because of this, then I'll probably open up and say, oh, I had a bad day too, but we'll get through it together. So
I love that. That's really good. All right, our fourth question is, and I feel like I do this to my own husband. It says, when I ask my teen, how was work or school or etc., and they give one-word answers, how do I get more details out of them? Or do they just let them be? So basically, like if they're like, Lexi, how was school today? And you're like, it was fine. Like they're wanting to know, like, how do I get more out of them? Or does that just mean that they don't want to talk to me? Oh, Levi's ready. I saw the mic up.
Yeah, I think that. Oh wait, I lost my train of thought. Oh, it's like kind of making it like a more open question, because if you're just like, "How was your day?" it's easy to just say good. But if you say like, "What did you do today?" and then build questions off of that, and then it feels more personal, like your parents actually like taking interest in your life. It's not just like, "Oh, I have to ask," because you kind of say that to anyone when you see them, like, "How was your day?" and then you feel like you're not really like loved or cared about because they're just asking you one-word questions. But when they ask you like more open questions, that's good. I like that personally. But yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really good. You're right, because otherwise it's kind of like when you go through the drive-through, right? And the person's like, hi, how are you today?
Yeah, exactly.
Good. So if your parents ask the same thing, like, good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So are there, I mean, you said open-ended questions. Like, are there more specific? Can you give more specific ideas?
I mean, even like, what did you do today? And then they'll say what they did, and then you can build questions off of that. And you can say like, oh yeah, I had to do this in-class essay. And then you can be like, how was that? What was it about? And all that, I think.
Yeah. I think off of that, I put down the questions. I'm on my own now. I just have more questions for you guys. Off of that, the other thing that they'd ask is, or do I just leave them alone? Are there times that they just leave you alone? Are there times where you just need space?
I think usually a parent should be able to tell if your kid is like totally off that day, because I know I have off days too, and sometimes I just don't want to talk about my day, or I just don't want to talk in general. So I think you should still ask them about their day, but if they are just like shaking you off and kind of dismissing you, then I would say let them be and kind of let them find their own, and then let them come to you if they really are struggling.
Yeah. Would you agree, Lexi?
Yes, I do agree with that.
I always see you nodding, so I'm like, oh, I want to hear from you too. Yeah. Well, something that last night we actually got together and we talked, and we also talked about relationships with your parents, because yes, this segment is called What I Wish My Parents Knew, but even beyond that, I know that all of you guys, more or less, like you have good relationships with your parents. And so we talked a little bit, and I just want to open it for us because we've got time. How can parents have better relationships with their students? Like where did that start for you guys? When you think of your parents, like what has built the relationship for you guys? Is that too open-ended of a question?
I don't think so.
Okay. Go ahead.
For me, something that my parents do that like means a lot to me is I don't even know completely how they do it, but they're really good at like taking an interest in my life without like interrogating me and like being like, what did you do at this exact moment? Where were you right now?
At 7:15.
Yeah, well, and like the way that they do that, they just like ask me questions, and it's like kind of reading the signs of like, oh, if I'm not really into it, then they're not gonna like push it too much. But when the way that they do that, it like makes me like, I kind of tell my parents like everything about my life for the most part, because I just like feel like they actually care and feel like they really care about my life, and it's in Proverbs they talk about too, like listen to your parents' like wisdom and wear it like a necklace around your neck. And it's like I feel like people don't take advantage of parents that much because they've been through exactly what you're going through almost. So they have so much wisdom, and it's like someone that loves you so much and cares about you so much, and like you don't really have anyone else that feels like the way a parent feels for you. I mean, I don't have kids, but I imagine it's pretty strong. But so I think, yeah, that's for me at least.
Yeah. Does anyone want to add to that? Oh, do it, Lexi. You go this time.
I think if you make a mistake and your parents don't punish, like they can punish you, but like knowing that you can take the responsibility for your mistake and you'll build off of that like helped my trust with my parents a lot by showing that I can grow as a person even after I made a mistake, like a really big mistake. And just they've allowed more trust in me because I've showed that I can build off and become a better person and not make that mistake again.
So did you feel like your parents had a conversation with you to like learn from that mistake, or?
They definitely a big problem happened a couple months ago, and they definitely did sit me down and they showed that they were very disappointed, and they did not expect that from me because I'm the youngest of 4, and they were like, "Oh, I'd expect you to know from your siblings that you'd know how to not do that." But they definitely showed that if it will happen again, the relationship will like go down, and your trust won't be there as much.
But I like that they had that conversation with you, right? I know for me growing up, my dad was pretty strict. So it was just like, you've disappointed me, you're grounded, and that's it. So like, yeah, instead, parents having a conversation with your kids. I mean, definitely if they deserve it, ground them, but also have a conversation. I like that. That's really good.
Oh, one other thing I want to say about the whole like strict parents and everything is like I would say have more like trust in your kids, because like I don't know. I mean, if like someone doesn't trust you, I don't want to communicate stuff about my life, you know? Like, and also like if your teen really wants to do something, they're probably going to find a way to do it. So that doesn't mean just let them go do whatever they want, obviously. But also, if your teen's like, I want to go out and do drugs or something, don't just, I mean, say no. But that was a bad example.
No.
But just, like, don't just say no. I think explaining why, like, you can't do that, you know, is also important instead of just saying no. And just communication and trust, because if you trust your kid, then they're going to trust you and then want to share more about their lives and everything like that. And yeah, also, like, if your kid asks you something, it tells you about something about their lives, don't just discipline them and yell at them and be like, that was horrible. Because then I don't want to tell someone if they're just going to yell at me when I tell them about my life.
Yeah. It's funny because it's such a, like, it goes for both sides, right? Parents and you guys as teens. I remember my dad was so strict with me and had a curfew, and I was such a good kid, you guys. Like, my parents will watch this and be like, no, she wasn't. But I really was. Like, they would give me this curfew, and I'd be hanging out with my church friends, like doing innocent things, and my parents would he'd get mad at me if I was late for my curfew. And I remember once screaming, like, if you're going to treat me like I'm out doing drugs and getting pregnant, then I'm going to do it, which... Don't do that, teenagers. Like, that's not the best response. But my point in that being, like, I wish my parents would have known to have a conversation with me and give me more responsibility, which is what you're saying, but also on the teen end, right? Like, also knowing that I need to communicate that I want more responsibility. And like Lexi said, like, I need to start proving that I can take on that responsibility. So, yeah, I like all that. Maya, do you want to add anything to...
I just have something for more the teenagers than anything. I don't know if teenagers are watching this.
We'll make them.
But if they are, just know that your parents are also learning too. Like, this is not, like, unless you have other siblings, they're still learning just as much as you are. And nothing that they're going to do, or most of the things that they're going to do, is not going to be perfect. So just have a little bit of grace when they discipline you and it's kind of out of hand and you're just like, what are you doing? But just, like, keep having that open mind with them because they're learning just as much as you are. And I think that's really important.
That's so good. That's really good. And you said unless they have other siblings. But really, even if you have 8 older siblings, you are still a completely different person. And so even for you, they're still trying to figure that out, right? Like Levi, I hate to tell you this, but your mom and I have talked before, and and she talks about how your older siblings, like you're drastically different than them. And so just learning who you were versus who they were, because all of you guys as teens respond differently to conversations and scenarios. And yeah. Well, we've only got about 5 minutes left. I'm going to just open the floor if you don't have anything. But is there any other things, whether it's to teens or parents, that you feel like you wish parents knew, or you wish teens knew, or you would encourage them with? I feel like, Maya, you started it out great with that, but you got, I knew Levi.
Personally, like, I feel like I don't communicate how I feel that much about words. So for me, at least, also, this is great if my parents are listening, but like, I really love my parents like a ton, and I don't communicate that a lot. And also just remember that like, things aren't always personal. If I come home and I don't want to talk to you, it might not be that I don't want to talk to you. It might be, yeah, like what Maya was saying, like, I'm just having a bad day and don't want to talk to anybody. So I think it's just like a journey. So don't just take like one point and be like, oh, they said this one thing, and then overthink everything. Because I don't know what goes through a parent's head, but like, I think that, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
I loved that, Levi. I really did. I thought that was so good. Yeah. Because even as adults, like, I'm married, right? And sometimes Josh will come home and I think he's like so angry at me because he's like zoned out, checked out. And I'm like, I'm like on top of him over like, what are you doing? Why do you hate me? What have I done? And he's like, I just like need time. Like, I talked to patients today and I just need, so the same with you guys too, right? Yeah. I like that. Lexi?
I think another thing is how you were saying, like, oh, if you're gonna treat me like I'm doing drugs and out getting pregnant, don't do that. Just don't do that. Just not treating your teenager like they're a stereotypical teenager, because that's most of the time. I don't think most of us are stereotypical teenagers, but just showing that there's like some priority of like adultness in your relationship, and showing that you can see them as an adult and that they can make adult decisions, and you're not always going to be there, but knowing that your parents will be there by your side when you make their decisions, but you're not going to say like, oh, your decision was bad, so I'm not going to stand by you anymore. But like, even if you disagree, standing by their side and saying like, it will be okay whether or not you make the right decision, but we will be there if it goes bad, and we will hold your hand through it.
That's good. I actually, I had a student once talk to me about this, and I thought it was so good. They were frustrated with their parents because they're like, my dad is always telling me, well, I know what I did when I was your age. And so he was making all of the rules and just assuming that his son was choosing the same things. And so I feel like that's kind of even what you're saying, Lexi, of like, yes, stereotypical teenagers now, but even parents, like, you grew up in a completely different age than you guys did. Like, I mean, I'm only 30 and I grew up in a different age than you guys did. I didn't have a smartphone or anything. So remembering that, right, just because you did something when you were a teen, your teenager is completely different. So
yeah. Also, I'm a teenager, so I know like a lot of other teenagers. And from what I see is that the teenagers with the strictest parents are always the farthest on that end of this, like,
the rebellious
side. And most of the people that I know who are, and me included, I would say, who are like not as rebellious, are like, who have parents who aren't really like that, who aren't just say, go do whatever you want, but actually like talk about it with you and be like, these are things you shouldn't do because it's going to lead you down this path, and tell you why you shouldn't do these things, and set like some rules, but not like completely not let you live your life at all, you know? It just, that trust is, I think, is the most important thing. Trust and communication.
yeah. Which I agree with that, but I will also just throw this out there because Maya and I have talked about this before. Like, yes, it's awesome when parents give you freedom, but I still think that as parents, there should be some lines and some rules. Maya and I have talked about that because we we have friends or we've seen friends that their parents let them do anything and everything. And Maya, like, one day told me, like, I'm so glad that my parents love me enough to give me rules. And I went home and I was like, okay, who is this 47-year-old person talking to me? Like, it's so deep. So there's definitely a happy medium, but yes, still, giving freedom. All right, you guys. Well, with that said, we're going to wrap up our panel. I'm so grateful for you guys. They gave a Saturday up just to be here and share their hearts with you guys. And I want to encourage you that if you want to hear more from students, we actually have a podcast, and you three are on this podcast. Yes. I'm just doing this plug really quickly because it's important. But just because it might not answer for parents like what teens wish you knew, but you guys go through a lot of topics like faith and depression and all kinds of things. And so I encourage you, whether you have a teen, point them that direction, or you as a parent, listen to it, because it's almost like getting into the mind of a teenager. So you can look that up, New Break Students, and you'll be able to find that on all podcasts, right? Yeah. All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to wrap it up with our hosts, Marcus and Kamar. See ya.
Oh, thank you guys so much for joining us for the Relationship Conference. We hope that you're walking out of today encouraged, maybe a little challenged even, but definitely holding on to the tools that you need to grow and thrive in your most important relationships. And I know for me, after a conference, my brain feels so full and tired. Right. So I need really solid next steps to take so that I can make it back to all the resources that I need as I process and start to apply what I'm learning. So I think a great next step for all of us today, myself included, and all of us, is to head back over to newbreak.church/the Relationship Conference resources. I know that's long. We'll make sure the link is in the comments or in the show notes or something for you guys so you can click it really easily. But it looks different than the landing page did this morning. So I encourage you guys to get back there, because there's things like the Right Now media access that we talked about, book recommendations, free counseling referrals.
Right.
You can watch the Relationship Conference on demand, so you can revisit all those moments that helped you the most. And maybe, most especially because you can get in contact with our pastors that way for prayer, questions, and just anything else you need, really.
Right. And I'd encourage you, if you really got something out of this conference today, of course you can share it in the comments. Why don't you go ahead and share this conference with someone? Let them know, hey, I really received something out of this that will change the way I parent, maybe change the way I love my spouse. So if you would share that as well, that would help get this message and get the wisdom that we heard today out to many more people. Now, that's one of the next steps. Another one would be joining a life group. At New Break, we are passionate about connecting people with God through authentic relationships to serve communities. And we do that through authentic relationships in life groups. Now, all ages are in life groups, from our kids to our teens to our adults. All of us are in life groups. And what's so cool is we have life groups coming up in just a few weeks. April 18th is our kickoff date for life groups. Now, we'll have some groups that will be meeting in person, some that will still be able to meet online or through Zoom or whatever avenue they want to go about that way. So maybe you're watching, you're saying, well, I don't live in beautiful San Diego. That's perfect. We have people in a life group right now with Pastor Isaac. Some are living in Arizona, Texas, and different places, and he's here in San Diego. So we're able to connect people from different walks of life, different ages, and different places as well. So life groups are powerful. Go online to newbreak.church/groups, and you can sign up for a group today, and one of our life group team members will be able to partner with you and connect you with authentic people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're throwing a lot of links at you guys, but this is an online conference. So lastly, we want to invite you again to our Easter services, or really any Sunday service at any of our campuses, because our most important relationship to grow in is our relationship with God.
Right.
What you believe about Jesus is the most important decision that you're ever going to make.
That's right.
And so we want you to be a part of our services. We want you to know that God loves you, that he's for you, that he never, ever stops working to bring people back into right relationship with himself. So if you'd like to join us for services, you can head on over to easter@newbreak.com. That will get you all of the service times for Easter, including what to expect for outdoor services and all of that. So we hope you guys will join us for that.
That's right. And Easter, all the service times are the same at all the campuses and online. Friday at 7 p.m. for Good Friday, which is going to be an amazing service, just time to reflect on what Jesus did for us on the cross. And then Easter Sunday, what a celebration Sunday at 9 a.m. and 10:45 at all campuses, online and in person. We would love to see you there. It's going to be great.
Absolutely.
Well, church, thank you so much for joining us for the Relationship Conference. We hope that you were empowered, you gained some wisdom, and also you feel a little more encouraged to maybe take a next step in that relationship. Have a conversation that's maybe needed to be had for a while. You get to have it now through the lens of saying, I know that I'm not perfect, and that's okay. How can we make this relationship grow into what Christ would want it to look like? Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.